the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Rain this morning clears east, although lingers across eastern Scotland. Frequent showers for many following the rain, along with hail and thunder in places. Here's the main band of rain. During the next few hours, it clears its way into the North Sea, but a branch of the rain just lingers across east and northeast Scotland, and some more persistent rain for the south of Scotland. Elsewhere, frequent and heavy showers, gusty winds, hail and thunder mixed in. In between the showers, there will be some brighter spells and temperatures of 18 to 21 Celsius in the south, 15 to 17 further north. So a touch above average for the time of year, but not feeling very pleasant at all, where we're stuck under the rain clouds. And this area of rain just persists across the northeast of Scotland throughout the day, heavy at times. Towards the south and west of Scotland, it's drier, still a few showers, and Northern Ireland will see plenty of downpours as the day comes to an end. England and Wales in between showers, some brighter or clearer interludes, but plenty of cloud and also gusty winds, making it feel on the cool side. Now we go into Tuesday night with those showers continuing in many places. They will ease towards the southwest for a time, but only ahead of the next weather system that's approaching by dawn, bringing another spell of persistent and heavy rain. Temperatures overnight not dropping too far, 12 to 14 in the south, 10 or 11 further north, more comfortable than many of the nights were last week for sleeping. But it's a wet start to the day across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest. The persistent rain here moves into central and eventually eastern parts of the UK by the afternoon. It's going to linger longest across Northern Ireland, but for Wales and the southwest, frequent heavy showers follow, and it's going to feel a bit cooler with gusty winds continuing.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's a totally tax-free £76,543.21 in cash to be won. Cash to spend on anything you like. That's like having over £6,000 extra to spend each month for a whole year. You could spend it on a bucket list holiday, treats for all of the family, or just save it for a rainy day. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain,
with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 2nd of June. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Mark White. Outrage as body cam footage is released showing the final moments of Henry Novak's life as he lay dying on the ground. He's handcuffed by the police as he desperately pleads for help. Politicians have spoken out in fury this morning.
An accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder.
I'm not denying at all that their conduct here, there is certainly and are certainly questions to answer.
Well, leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, tells GB News she feels for the family.
I just could not express to you how awful I feel for Henry and his family. How to have those to be his dying moments. It's an awful way to die, an appalling way to die.
The killer, Vikram Digwa, is jailed for life, and Henry's dad, Mark Novak, bravely spoke outside the court.
The jury confirmed what we've always known. Henry's life was taken from him unlawfully, violently, and without justification.
A police force in Wales tells officers to log anti-Islam conversations if they go beyond legitimate discussion of the religion. Is this an example of two-tier policing?
In other news, the Mandelson files reveal the now Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, complained that his Labour colleagues are constantly asking, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? Are Labour officially the party of welfare claimants?
Details of how former SNP chief Peter Morrell embezzled £400,000 from the party over a 12-year period have been revealed in court. Stay tuned to find out how.
And tech bosses have suggested microchips could be inserted under the skin of offenders to track their movements. Is that a good idea?
A mile long, 800 foot wide, as high as a skyscraper, Super Cruise has been proposed as a living city on the water. The Freedom Ship will house a research hospital, several schools, shops and sports stadiums to serve a population as big as Chatham in Kent. Would you like to live in a floating city?
Well, Mark, since that body cam footage was released last night, a huge wave of political response. Far more. Those who have been silent suddenly speaking out.
And understandably so. I mean, it was so distressing. I saw Patrick on the show last night, who was in tears, understandably, by what he had witnessed, because what we saw there was the final moments of the life of this young man, not given comfort and solace by the police officers near him, but being treated as a suspect. His pleas for help, that he'd been stabbed, that he couldn't breathe, largely going responded to, unhelped in any kind of way.
I mean, just devastating how he must have felt such a sense of injustice in that moment, going in and out of consciousness, begging for help, while being arrested on the ground, dragged, as it looks, on the gravel, totally undignified. And we're going to be hearing a statement this afternoon, about 2:30, I think, from the Home Secretary. It'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. That's Shabana Mahmood.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, really, it cemented how inappropriately the officers at the scene responded in terms of the first duty of any police officer is the preservation of life. You're told by a young man that they've been stabbed, and yet you can see from the body-worn video there's some discussion about injuries, but no real checks that take place. We heard from the judge in his sentence remarks yesterday about how it was dark and a confused situation. Well, we could see it wasn't that confused. There weren't people shouting and screaming at each other, and the police have torches. There was a porch light on, which gave a certain amount of illumination. You could see that the police were using their torches to look at certain things. At one point, a police officer, she's looking into the eyes of Henry Novak. This is when they realise that he had lapsed into unconsciousness, saying that she's getting no response from his pupils and shining a torch on. So there was illumination. There was an ability, had they properly checked, to find traces of blood on this young man's body.
Presumably it's their job to deal with incidents that take place in the dark. But do get in touch. We're going to bring you all the latest on this horrendous story. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch with me and Mark today. But we're going to get the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Mark, Emily, thank you, and good afternoon to you. 5 minutes past midday. Well, the family of Henry Novak's killer has now apologised to his family after the 18-year-old student was murdered in Southampton. In a statement issued through the Sikh Press Association, Vikram Digwa's family said they were deeply sorry for the pain and suffering Henry's family has endured. They also apologised to the Sikh community and asked that the case is not used to inflame division or hostility towards any community. It comes after police released this distressing body cam footage showing Henry being handcuffed in his final moments after he had been fatally stabbed. The police watchdog is now investigating the circumstances of that incident. Well, earlier today, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage says the case raises serious questions about police judgment at the scene and whether officers gave enough weight to the fact that Henry was the person who had been attacked.
The last thing he heard on this earth was him being read his rights by the police. He was actually treated in a way that meant an accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder. What does he say? I can't breathe.
In other news, the SNP's former chief executive Peter Murrell has been led from court in handcuffs this morning after details were heard of how he embezzled £400,000 from the party. The High Court in Edinburgh was told the money came from membership fees and donations held in party bank accounts that Murrell had control of. Prosecutors said he made direct transfers, used party cards for personal purchases and falsified accounting records to cover his tracks. The court also heard items like a Jaguar worth more than £81,000, a motorhome of £124,000, more than £23,000 spent at luxury stationery brands and a £3,000 robotic lawnmower were described in the accounts as legal fees. The death toll from Russian strikes overnight has now risen to at least 17 after one of Moscow's largest assaults in cities across Ukraine. 100 more were injured, including children, after overnight missile and drone attacks hit apartment blocks. Emergency crews are still searching through the rubble today for people feared trapped. It comes after Moscow had warned it would launch systematic strikes in response to a Ukrainian drone attack in Russian-held Luhansk. Yvette Cooper has said that Lord Peter Mandelson should never have been appointed as Britain's ambassador to the United States. The Foreign Secretary described the release of messages about his appointment as an unedifying process, but said it was right that the government is transparent. More than 1,000 pages of documents were published yesterday, including exchanges between Mandelson and senior ministers. But the Tories say the newly released files about Lord Mandelson's appointment show a failure visible from space. The Shadow Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burghart told us this morning that he thinks the release still leaves major gaps.
Once again, we discovered that Prime Minister had been told This guy carried on being friends with Epstein after Epstein had gone to prison. He was the director of a Russian defense firm that had supplied arms to Putin during Putin's invasion of Crimea. And he had very suspect business dealings in China and so on. And the cabinet secretary, chief civil servant in the country, said at the time, if you're going to make this appointment, get his security vetting done first. Prime Minister ignored that, went and appointed him anyway, and then by January 2025, Mandelson's in Washington looking at highly classified information despite not having any security vetting. It's completely wrong. It's a real abrogation of responsibility. It's very serious. It's why the Conservative Party have pushed so hard to get this information out in public.
London Underground drivers have begun the first of two 24-hour strikes today, bringing major disruption to tube services across the capital. Members of the RMT union walked out at midnight after 5 hours of last-minute talks with TfL failed to resolve a dispute over working patterns. No service is expected on the Circle Line, Piccadilly, parts of the Met Line and parts of Central. A planned second strike is set for Thursday. And public confidence in the value of going to university has fallen sharply. The British Social Attitudes Survey found a record 34% of people now believe university is not worth the time or money. That's more than double the proportion who said the same thing in 2005. The findings come amid growing concern over student debt, graduate job prospects and financial pressure across the higher education sector. Those are the latest headlines this hour. I'll be back with you shortly. Next, though, look at the midday markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
10 minutes past 12, the markets for you this hour. The pound will buy $1.3467 and €1.1566 euros. The price of gold, £3,359 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 10,370 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
Thanks very much indeed, Sam, for the latest headlines. Our top story this hour, police have released body cam footage showing the final moments of 18-year-old Henry Novak's life. A warning, what we're about to show on screen are obviously distressing images.
But we do so with the consent of Henry's family, who want people to see for themselves how their teenager was treated in the moments leading up to his death.
Well, we're joined now by GB News reporter Isabel Fegulak. Isabel, clearly lots of reaction coming in today. Chief among them, of course, from the family of young Henry's murderer. What did they have to say for themselves?
Yes, we had that statement in from Degua's family earlier today. They apologised to the Sikh community for their son's actions. They asked that this tragedy is not used by anyone to inflame division or hostility towards any community. And they've asked for privacy as they come to terms with what lies ahead. Now, I can also confirm that following yesterday's sentencing, where Vikram Degua was given a life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years, he will appear again at Southampton Magistrates Court today in just over an hour, along with his father and his brother. The CPS have confirmed that further charges have been authorised against the three of them. Those charges all relating to possessions of weapons, both in public and in private. Now, that apology and that speech, that statement from the Degua family is likely to come off the back of what the judge said directly to Vikram Degua in court yesterday as he handed down that sentence. He told Vikram Degua, "You have brought shame upon your family, your community and your religion, and that you have brought misery and a lifetime of loss to his family and anyone that knew him." Of course, the family family spoke yesterday. His dad, Henry Novak's dad, Mark Novak, just behind where I'm stood now. We saw that powerful speech there. We also heard some extremely powerful impact statements inside the courtroom. His mother saying that no sentence will ever bring Henry back, that the circumstances were so tragic and unimaginable that the pain is above anything she ever knew existed. There were some really, really sad stories told in court from his stepmom about his 6-year-old younger sibling who is afraid that the person that killed Henry would go into their house and kill them all. She also talked about how a moment that really struck her in her grief was when they went back to Southampton to Henry Novak's university room, and she found his advent calendar that had only been opened those 3 days. He died on the 3rd of December after his first term at university. He was the first member of his family to go to university, and his father, Henry Novak's father, also said that he will carry the guilt with him of letting him go to university. Of course, he spoke outside of court. He told us that the police heard Henry saying that he'd been stabbed 4 times and that he said he couldn't breathe 9 times. That body cam footage that we've seen, that extremely distressing footage, you can see just how many times and how much Henry Novak tried to tell his truth, and he was not believed in the moment. Of course, he heard the last things he heard before he lost consciousness were the police reading out his rights to him. An extremely distressing bit of footage. Of course, we also have that 999 call from Degua's brother, one of the people who will be appearing in court again today, in which they say that they'd been racially attacked. That was a lie. Of course, the prosecution said that was a wicked lie. They appear again in court this afternoon for further charges that have now been authorised.
Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Fekalak there, our reporter outside the court.
Of course, another thing that Henry heard in his dying moments, not just the callous disregard of the police officers on scene, but his murderer, you know, lying, telling the police that he had been racially abused, that he was somehow injured, although you couldn't see any kind of injury on his face. I mean, the whole episode is just disgusting.
Yeah, and interesting that the CPS is now authorising extra charges against some of the members of the family there. But today, the political fallout from this shocking murder has very much continued. Earlier this morning, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage released a statement.
But the most important thing that needs to change, that has to change, if our society is not to be ripped apart, where communities start to distrust each other and deeply distrust the police and all the other institutions of this country, is we need a change in culture. Enough of anti-white prejudice.
OK, well, we're going to debate this. We're joined now by political commentator Fahima Mohammed and the writer and YouTube Ada Akpala. Ada, I'll start with you. Nigel Farage has compared the final moments of Henry Novak to those of George Floyd and talked about the difference in how the police and the rest of society have treated it, saying that the decision to handcuff Henry demonstrates the rights of white people mattered less than those of ethnic minorities, and that we need to end anti-white prejudice. Ada, do you believe there is anti-white prejudice in policing and even in society as a whole?
I certainly do. I believe there's anti-white prejudice in policing, institutions and beyond. And to be honest, you didn't need this Henry Novak case for us to determine that. A lot of people like myself have been raising the alarm for years. And we've been saying that if this anti-white hostility isn't nipped in the bud, first of all, if it's not even named, we can't even name it because people play semantic games saying, well, actually, racism involves institutions and power. Well, how many more examples do we need to have where institutions from the top levels to individual instances like this, where we see a young, innocent boy, young man, bleeding out to death, asking for help, telling the police officers the situation, and he's disbelieved simply because of his skin color. We have to be honest about that. And how do we know this? Because if the races were reversed, we know that the police action would have been more prompt, because they know the consequences of not following those protocols that they've received, in their various anti-racist trainings and so on. So I certainly believe that there is anti-white prejudice, hostility, even racism, because now institutions are continuously involved when you see cover-ups and lack of action, lack of belief, where instead white people in these situations are always seen as the aggressor, always seen as the one who might have been, been in the wrong in this situation. And we must talk about it. We must call it out.
Fahima, I've covered policing issues for decades. I speak to police officers constantly. They tell me that after many, many years of suffering a reputational kicking because of racist issues in the past, that now from the top down, it's instilled in them every aspect of just being totally alive to the race issue. So much so that they're second-guessing themselves now when they're on the scene of incidents. Do you acknowledge, Fahima, that this is an issue?
I do acknowledge, but I do feel, first of all, that this debate should begin with Henry Novak, not politics, an 18-year-old man that lost his life in horrific circumstances, and his family does deserve answers, accountability and justice, especially after looking at those footage that is, has emerged, which is deeply disturbing. However, where I would argue caution is jumping from a tragic individual case to claiming that Britain's entire public sector is institutionally anti-white. If evidence of prejudice exists, it should be exposed. If mistakes were made, those responsible should be held to account. But justice requires evidence, not assumptions. And for me, the principle is simple. Every victim, regardless of race, religion or background, deserves the same protection, the same urgency and the same standard of care from public services. I work with police and probation officers. I have clients that are ex-offenders. I do work within the Ministry of Justice and vetted by them. So this is not new to me either. And I do not think that we should be using this as a political weapon, for our own agenda. This is serious questions. Obviously, the IOPC investigation matters because it should establish what actually happened. Was this bias, incompetence, poor training, panic at the scene, or officers being misled by false allegations? We should not replace an investigation with political slogans.
Ada, what do you think to that this is all being politicised and that we shouldn't be making generalisations? This is just one moment in time.
It certainly isn't one moment. I think we are seeing a pattern of this now. And I think it is a little bit rich from people on the other side of the debate saying that these things shouldn't be politicized, where for the last 5 to 10 years, race has been explicitly politicized. We have seen cases such as the Chris Cabot case, where it's been automatically assumed or reinforced that this idea of institutional racism, when the facts show that, this was a guy with a very coloured history. There were specific instances in that case that led police officers to make the decisions they made, such as shooting him and so on. So race has always been weaponized. This case has to be actually in the public eye, because we have to understand that this is a growing concern. We have had so many instances of cover-ups. We even saw it a little bit in this case with the family going back to the house to conceal weapons and so on. But if you bring it larger, I know people will say, don't blow that dog whistle now. We can talk about the grooming gang scandal. We can talk about these cases where white people are not believed, are not heard, are not listened to because of this culture that we've built in, that they are perpetual bullies. So when you go into a situation, it's not to ascertain whether racism has occurred, whether the accusations leveled are true. No, you automatically, you take that caution, and this costs lives. Okay, so it absolutely has to be in the political conversation.
Let me just go back to Fahima just for a few seconds of a rebuttal there. But, isn't Ada right here that at the end of the day, Mark Duggan, Chris Kappa, George Floyd, they were always seized upon by that side of the argument and politicised. Why is there not a legitimate debate to be had here without it being shut down, as it appears you were attempting to do?
No, I wasn't attempting to do any of that. Please do not put words in my mouth. We should not dismiss anti-white prejudice if it is a possibility. What I'm saying is let the investigation be taken seriously before jumping into conclusions and causing it. My concern is that this case could be used in two dangerous ways. One side may dismiss legitimate concerns about anti-white prejudice, which is wrong, but on the other side, it may use Henry's case and his murder to undermine all racism claims, as if it's one false allegation means racism is usually fake.
I guess I think I just have...
make sure that justice has to be consistent, and that's why we should have more investigation before jumping into these kind of conclusions and having politicians...
OK, we're going to have to... Sorry to interrupt you.
I guess I just have a question.
Very quickly, 10 seconds.
Fahima, you keep saying we shouldn't jump into conclusions. Can I ask you a very direct question? Were it a black man or a so-called brown man who was saying 9 times that he couldn't breathe and white officers said, well, you're not, mate, you're fine, mate, should we jump into assumptions then as well, or no? Would that be a sign of outright racism? I'm just asking for the black community here.
Failure and training, and the evidence has to show a serious failure when it comes to that. We have to not just make conclusions. I personally didn't make those kind of conclusions when it came to those cases either.
You've been able to rebut that question. Thank you very much. Fahima, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much to you both. Fahima Mohammed and Ada Ekpala there. A strong debate. I was looking at the College of Policing, Mark White, and how just after BLM, suddenly they had their anti-racist was the new term. So you have to see everything through the sphere of being anti-racist. So why on earth would you ever take the white man's position, would you? Because it's risky.
It's exactly what I say, and very briefly, because we need to move on. It's why when I speak to officers all the time, they're constantly telling me they're second-guessing everything they do for fear of something coming back to bite them.
Well, absolutely. Anyway, you can vote on today's poll. If you want to vote, simply go to gbnews.com/you decide. It is, are we living in a two-tier society, with particular reference to policing, I imagine. Your vote matters, so do get in touch.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Tech bosses have suggested microchips are the answer. They could be inserted under the skin of offenders to track their every movement. Do you think that's a good idea? But after the break...
The Mandelson files reveal the now Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden complaining that his Labour colleagues are constantly asking, who can we tax next? That's coming after the break.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
The late edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, late edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, late edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, in other news, it is 12:29, by the way. You're watching Good Afternoon Britain with me and Mark. Now, the latest tranche of Mandelson files have cemented Labour's new reputation as the party of welfare. Yes, the now Work and Pension Secretary, Pat McFadden, vented to Lord Mandelson that every meeting revolves around who can we tax in order to pay benefits for others. Surprise.
What a shocker. Reform UK's Robert Jenrick branded the comments the nail in the coffin for the government amid growing pressure on Sir Keir Starmer's premiership.
This also comes as sources tell GB News that messages between the Prime Minister and Lord Peter Mandelson have been withheld, raising vital questions over what information has not been disclosed.
Well, joining us now is political commentator Benedict Spence. Good afternoon. Good to see you, Benedict. This was always the danger, wasn't it, for the government, that, you know, once you start putting out Mandelson-related correspondence, that there would be other issues just sneaking in, quite embarrassing issues.
Yeah, this, as you say, this was always going to be sort of a snowball effect, where once one thing is sort of comes to light, it then turns out that Peter Mandelson has had links and checks in all sorts of different areas. And if nothing else, that's a reflection of the sort of pernicious influence he's had on the Labour Party for a very long time, which in of itself also explains how it was that he was able to be promoted to the role of ambassador, despite everybody else in the country raising an eyebrow and going, that does make an awful lot of sense. But I mean, what these revelations show, I wouldn't say they're necessarily anything new, in that they are things that people have long suspected but didn't think for a second ministers might be silly enough to actually say out loud. Everybody looks at how the Labour Party has behaved since it came into office, and if you were to say, well, they're simply looking for who it is that they can tax to pay welfare beneficiaries, most people would look at the government's track record and go, yeah, that sounds about right. All this is simply somebody being silly enough to say it out loud and being caught on the record. And of course, as you say, there's more stuff almost certainly going to come out as a result of this. It continues to be the slow-acting poison on the Prime Minister. And the fact that things, you know, conversations between Mandelson and the Prime Minister have not been released yet, I think simply confirms people's suspicions that there is more and frankly worse out there.
Yes, and that's what people will be very interested to read, what Keir Starmer was saying to Peter Mandelson and how that decision over his appointment was made. But just looking at the taxes that Labour have brought in, employer national insurance, they've hiked capital gains tax, VAT on private schools, inheritance tax on farms, stamp duty on additional homes, business asset disposal relief they've changed, energy profits levy, that's the windfall tax, etc., etc. The list goes on. And at the same time, the welfare bill is ballooning. They weren't even able to make that tiny little slither of a cut to the PIP payments, were they?
They weren't, and it shows, frankly, you know, for all Keir Starmer promised sort of a more mature approach to politics, grown-ups back in the room, of course, those ill-fated words, and, you know, at least competence when it comes to the technocracy that he's inherited. Ultimately, he's just not capable of installing this on his own party. It's the same old Labour Party that it always was. It's not particularly, you couldn't even use the word progressive. It's not very forward-thinking. It just falls back on the old tried and uncontested idea that you can just tax your way to prosperity. It is the attitude of the party that emerged in the sort of the ashes of empire of a once wealthy, industrialized country thinking, oh, there are lots of things that we can tax. It's not moved on in the century or so since then. It still believes that this is a fabulously wealthy country and that all the wealth has just been accumulated by a very small group of people. And it also rather foolishly believes, A, that these people do exist, which increasingly they don't, and B, the ones that do are stuck here in perpetuity, and there are absolutely no downsides to taxing them. It's not like they can get on a plane and go somewhere else. It's not like they have clever tax arrangements with tax havens elsewhere. This is really deeply concerning, that it's a party that isn't able to smell the coffee and see the worldview, and it still doesn't understand the damage of all those taxes, Emily, that you've sort of spoken about, what that's doing to the lack of wealth creation, keeping young people out of work. It still isn't aware of the damage that it's causing.
Yeah, they don't seem to understand that actually raising taxes may have impacts on people's behaviour, including on business. But Benedict Spence, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Benedict.
Thank you. A friend of Lord Manderson told GB News that he had not released his WhatsApp messages because his lawyers were emphatic that nothing should cut across the police investigation. The Cabinet Office did not contest this, the friend said.
And a spokesman for Number 10 said, in the same way as other ministers, the PM has fully complied with the humble address by providing all the information he holds as required. The information submitted has been published by the Cabinet Office.
OK, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up.
A mile long, 800 foot wide, as high as a skyscraper, Super Cruise has been proposed as a living city on the water. The Freedom ship will house schools, shops, hospitals, you name it. It sounds fantastic or a living nightmare, depending on what you...
Yeah, would you live on this floating city? I might say, you might.
I would, actually,
yeah, you would.
yeah.
Let's get to the news headline.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 12:30, the top story this afternoon. The family of Henry Novak's killer has apologised to Henry's family, saying no one should ever have to carry the grief of losing a young life. Vikram Digwa's family also apologised to the Sikh community, saying his actions had brought it into disrepute and asked that the tragedy is not used to inflame tensions. Nigel Farage says that Henry's treatment by officers raises serious questions about police judgment.
An accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder.
Liverpool legend Sir Kenny Dalglish has revealed he's undergoing treatment for cancer. The 75-year-old confirmed the diagnosis after what he described as an inadvertent social media post saying his useless technology skills had forced his hand. Liverpool FC says the support, best wishes and love of everyone at the club are with Sir Kenny and his family. The SNP's former chief executive Peter Murrell has been led from court today in handcuffs after details were heard of how he embezzled £400,000 from the party. The High Court in Edinburgh was told that Murrell used membership fees and donations to buy cars, luxury stationery and a motorhome before creating false invoices to cover his tracks. That case has been adjourned for 2 weeks. And London Underground drivers have begun the first of two 24-hour strikes today, causing major disruption across the capital. RMT members walked out at midnight after last-minute calls with TfL failed. Little or no service is expected on several tube lines throughout the day. Those are the latest headlines for now. Full roundup with the lunchtime news at 1.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Well, do stick with us because our political editor has just left a meeting with the Prime Minister's spokesperson, so do stay tuned to see what he had to say. Your GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another very mixed day of weather across the United Kingdom today. Rain lingering in the far north of Scotland, heavy downpours elsewhere mixed with hail and thunder. These are going to be lively showers rotating around an area of low pressure that is sitting across northern Scotland, and that's where this occluded weather front is going to linger through the rest of the day. So outbreaks of more persistent rain north of the central belt, although largely avoiding Shetland and Orkney, where it's mostly dry. Further south, much of southern Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's slow-moving, heavy showers with some hail and thunder mixed in, gusty winds, but not feeling too cool, with temperatures still a degree or two above average, so in any brighter spells up to 22 Celsius. And there will be some brighter spells through the afternoon and evening, but watch out for these showers. There will be quite a few of them moving through on a stiff westerly breeze. Northern Ireland also seeing a number of showers, lots more cloud here, likewise for southern Scotland, but gaps in between the downpours. The rain across northern and western Scotland tending to ease through the evening, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by this stage, but mostly lightening and more patchy in nature before it moves away to the north. And then drier for many overnight, but still a number of showers moving in, especially across northern and western parts of the UK. And then we've got this next band of rain approaching from the Atlantic as the night progresses. A breezy night for many, so actually relatively mild, but not as stuffy as the nighttime was last week. Now, we start off Wednesday with outbreaks of persistent rain across Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Heavy at times. That does move through. It turns brighter, but also, again, more showery across western areas into the afternoon. The rain moves into eastern and northern parts. A damp day to come for many.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. 2 lanes of the northbound M25 are restricted due to roadworks, possibly causing significant delays towards Dartford. Traffic is moving slowly but steadily through the affected section. Meanwhile, no other significant road delays are currently reported. And on the trains, major disruption is ongoing on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington and Heathrow terminals, with issues extending to Reading. Great Western railway services are also heavily affected between London Paddington and Reading. Commuters are advised to plan their journeys accordingly. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Well, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It is now 12:40. We are about to go to Christopher Hope, our political editor, because it's a big day of politics. We are expecting to hear from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, around the 2:30 mark in response to the sentencing of Henry Novak and, of course, that body cam footage that was revealed. Very distressing indeed. Lots of you getting in touch. We had a bit of a debate, didn't we, earlier in the show?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. On, whether those officers that were at the scene may have been second-guessing themselves, whether this whole diversity issue is now so pervasive within the police service, within big corporations and elsewhere in the public sector, that people really do not know where they are and are always concerned that they might fall foul of, some of what are new ways of operating that maybe go against common sense for a lot of people.
It's amazing, isn't it? After the death of George Floyd and then the Black Lives Movement that erupted over in America, of course, but very much over here and in the rest of Europe, Western Europe anyway. Just the craziness, the adoption of the word anti-racist.
Yeah.
So you don't just have to be not racist, you have to be anti-racist. And I think that's what shaped this ideology, isn't it? Because if you look at a white man and a black man and they're in some kind of altercation or something has happened, if you are anti-racist, surely you are then, the impetus is put on you to be taking the side of the person who is not white.
Yeah. Well,
in order to be anti-racist.
I know that one of our guests, Fahima, accused me of trying to put words in her mouth over her apparent unwillingness to get into the issue and this debate that we're having, saying that we shouldn't, get ahead of ourselves here. But the fact is, when you look at George Floyd or Mark Duggan or Chris Kaba, I was out in all of those protests, Emily, when thousands upon thousands of people already made their minds up, were out on the street where they're accusing the police in America and, of course, here in London at that time of, being institutionally racist in the way that they deal with people from the black community. Minds were made up.
But is that what Nigel Farage is doing here? Is he going too much the other way and saying, well, actually saying the same thing, but in reverse, saying that now we have anti-white prejudice institutionalised?
Well,
is that helpful?
He might argue that, after years of it working one way, that he's entitled to actually say, look, halt, stop, reverse turn. This is where we are. This is what is now happening on a regular basis.
That's very much what he is saying. Well, it's time for the Great British Giveaway. Yes, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win an incredible £76,543.21 tax-free cash. Here's Hayley Sparks to tell you how.
This year, your summer could be sensational, as we're giving you the chance to win a simply stunning £76,543.21 in tax-free cash. That's cash that could go towards family treats, spectacular summer days out, or give you the chance to chill out and relax somewhere like here, the Imperial Island Resort in Paphos. You really could be our next big winner with a whopping £76,543.21 in your bank. Just make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 26th of June.
For a chance to win £76,543.21 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck from us too. And we did hear belatedly from the Prime Minister last night on the case of Henry Novak. We are expecting at around 2:30 to hear from the Home Secretary as well, Shabana Mahmood, and we will be getting to Christopher Hope, our political editor, outside Downing Street very soon. And of course, we're also going to be talking about the SNP and that embezzlement of £400,000.
Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's a forecast for some top destinations around Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy and thundery rain will move through parts of Italy as well as Croatia during the middle of the week. Fine in Spain, but breezy for Madeira and the Canaries. Actually, more breezy than it usually is at this time of year. But across much of Spain, as well as Portugal, some warm sunshine, Balearics faring well. Likewise for Corsica and Sardinia. Here's the rain through Croatia and Italy. Some very heavy thunderstorms expected, only slowly easing Thursday, Friday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to
stop.
You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News.
Britain's news channel.
It's very hot indeed, and there's been a lot of talk about Clarkson and Co today, but the real stars of the show are these guys here. We've got the cows over there, and then just behind me we've got donkeys, we've got Highland cows over here, all sorts of animals. These are all here courtesy of Adam Henson, who we spoke to earlier today on GB News, star of Countryfile. It's been an amazing day here today. It's been incredibly hot, but everybody has been in great spirits, keeping themselves hydrated. It's on for one more day, so if you're in Warwickshire, you know where to come. But it's not just been about Clarkson, Caleb and Co. There's been a lot of familiar faces down here, and if you watch food videos on social media as much as I do, you'll know about Spudman. He's a small business owner. He's working here today, and I spoke to him earlier about what life has been like as a small business owner in the past few years.
I grew up in agriculture. I love it. We very much shout about the products. We use local farmer for our potatoes, we use a local dairy for our butter, our carrots for our coleslaws grown just down the road in Rugeley. Honestly, we've got to support our British farmers, and events like this really showcase what we can do in this country. It's amazing.
And as a small business owner yourself, you said you got to back British farming. How important is it right now more than ever that we do get behind little local businesses?
Oh, it's essential. Like, we don't want to lose what we've got. We've got the best producers in the world producing the best food in the world. You know, why do we need to go anywhere else? Use local.
So that was Spudman there, and do you know what? His words have been echoed by hundreds of people that we've spoken to today. We haven't just been speaking to the familiar faces, we've been speaking to the farmers and the fans and the people who have come down here to show their support for British agriculture.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 to 1. Good afternoon, Britain, on GB News. The SNP's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, has been led from court in handcuffs after details were heard of how he embezzled £400,000 from the party.
Yes, the High Court in Edinburgh was told Murrell used membership fees and donations to buy cars, luxury stationery, a motorhome, a £3,000 robotic lawnmower, before creating false invoices to cover his tracks.
Well, let's get the latest information now from our Scotland reporter, Tony McGuire. Tony, good afternoon to you. Quite the collection, and yet Nicola Sturgeon really notice any of it.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you'll get this reference, Mark. Certainly a few people are already calling this the Murrell collection. Obviously a nod to the famous Burrell collection here in Glasgow, and it's quite an assortment, catching the eye of many, with, you know, some kind of throwaway comments that he actually has quite good taste. Gives you a sense of the luxury that appeared on this list today. And of course, it ranged from everything from £2,000 spent on umbrellas to about £8,000 spent on watches that nobody knows what happened to by the time that the police got to the Murrell Sturgeon residence. Here's a little clip from the prosecutor beginning proceedings of today's narrative hearing, in which the prosecution laid out the facts of the case as they saw it.
From August 2010 until October 2022, he used party funds for a variety of unauthorised purposes. The total sum of money which he misused and thereby embezzled was £400,310.65. The source of those funds was the party's principal bank account, over which the accused had control. The money within that account came principally from membership fees and donations paid by party members and other donors, and legacies. In his role as CEO, the accused was able to make direct transfers of money from that bank account. He also had a charge card linked to that account in his name for use in paying for items required by the party, as did other members of staff.
So of course we know some of the big ticket items, that motorhome that sat in the driveway of Peter Murrell's mother's house, but there were some other revelations today as well. The fitted library that forms the backdrop for a lot of Nicola Sturgeon's kind of video conferencing calls. There was also, interestingly enough, right after the purchase of the motorhome, which Peter Murrell suggested was going to be a battle bus during the 2019 COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Well, the day after he bought that motorhome, he also purchased guides for inspiring journeys around Scotland, England and Ireland, just where the SNP needs to be picking up votes over in Donegal. And indeed, obviously, those Lalique £2,500 pepper grinder, which obviously was part of the furnishing for that camper van. And indeed, another new detail today was that 2 of his staffers were dragged in unwittingly and unknowingly to make some of these purchases, but a total of £400,000 was spent over the course of 12 years. And Peter Murrell will appear back here at the High Court in Edinburgh on June the 23rd to face his sentence.
54:20. Hello, Tony. Thank you very much indeed for that report. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on that developing story.
Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We're going to have lots more at the top of the next hour, of course, on Henry Novak. The fallout from that is that body cam video was released, Emily, that is
heartbreaking.
So heartrending.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another very mixed day of weather across the United Kingdom today. Rain lingering in the far north of Scotland, heavy downpours elsewhere, mixed with hail and thunder. These are going to be lively showers rotating around an area of low pressure that is sitting across northern Scotland. And that's where this occluded weather front is going to linger through the rest of the day. So outbreaks of more persistent rain north of the central belt, although largely avoiding Shetland and Orkney where it's mostly dry. Further south, much of southern Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's slow-moving, heavy showers with some hail and thunder mixed in, gusty winds, but not feeling too cool, with temperatures still a degree or 2 above average, so in any brighter spells up to 22 Celsius. And there will be some brighter spells through the afternoon and evening, but watch out for these showers. There will be quite a few of them moving through on a stiff westerly breeze. Northern Ireland also seeing a number of showers, lots more cloud here, likewise for southern Scotland, but gaps in between the downpours. The rain across northern and western Scotland tending to ease through the evening, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by this stage, but mostly lightening and more patchy in nature before it moves away to the north. And then drier for many overnight, but still a number of showers moving in, especially across northern and western parts of the UK. And then we've got this next band of rain approaching from the Atlantic as the night progresses. A breezy night for many, so actually relatively mild, but not as stuffy as the nighttime was last week. Now, we start off Wednesday with outbreaks of persistent rain across Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Heavy at times. That does move through. It turns brighter, but also, again, more showery across western areas into the afternoon. The rain moves into eastern and northern parts. A damp day to come for many.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
We're counting down to a spectacular summer. It's your chance to win £76,543 and 21 pence in totally tax-free cash. A lump sum that you could have in time to splash out with this summer. And because it's tax-free, you get to keep every single penny. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again. To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 2nd of June. I'm Mark White.
And I'm Emily Carver. Well, outrageous body cam footage is released showing the final moments of Henry Novak's life. As he lay dying on the ground, he's handcuffed by the police as he desperately pleads for help. Politicians have now spoken out in fury.
An accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder.
I'm not denying at all that their conduct here, there is certainly and are certainly questions to answer.
And leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, tells GB News she feels for the family.
I just could not express to you how awful I feel for Henry and his family. How to have those to be his dying moments. It's an awful way to die, an appalling way to die.
The killer, Vikram Digwa, is jailed for life, and Henry's father, Mark Novak, bravely spoke outside of court.
The jury confirmed what we've always known. Henry's life was taken from him unlawfully, violently, and without justification.
Meanwhile, a police force in Wales tells officers to log anti-Islam conversations if they go beyond legitimate discussion of the religion. Is this an example of two-tier policing?
In other news, the Mandelson files reveal that the now Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, complained that his Labour colleagues were constantly asking, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? Are Labour officially the party of welfare?
Tech bosses have suggested microchips could be inserted under the skin of offenders to track their movements. Do you think that's a good idea?
And a mile-long, 800-foot wide, as high as a skyscraper super cruiser has been proposed as a living city on the water. Yes, the Freedom Ship will house a research hospital, several schools, shops, a sports stadium to serve a population as big as Chatham in Kent. Would you live on this floating city? interesting to see the reactions of our politicians from the different parties. All have come out to condemn, obviously, the murder of Henry Novak in such circumstances. But in terms of the way the police handled the situation, what that tells us about policing and society, they've taken different approaches, haven't they? Nigel Farage came out swinging this morning in his statement, saying that there is anti-white prejudice on display, white lives matter, comparing this death to what happened to George Floyd and saying there should be similar outrage, sort of looking, you know, if the tables were turned, if it was one and the other, would the victim have been treated differently? Kemi Badenoch, however, she's criticised, hasn't she, what Nigel Farage has had to say with the White Lives Matter stuff. She says this may be reinforcing differences and acting as tribalism. And so she doesn't want to get into that kind of rhetoric necessarily.
Listen, I can appreciate that she doesn't. And, you know, what she said was heartfelt, there's no doubt, you know, when she spoke about what Henry Novak's parents were going through. But I just speak as someone that, you know, is intimately sort of involved in covering policing matters and speak to police officers all of the time about the way in which they have to do their job now. The restrictions are placed under, the fear that they have every day that they may land in trouble themselves because they haven't given due regard to someone who has made a complaint, for instance, because of the new diversity rules and regulations that are passed down right from the commissioners, the chief constables at the top of their force, right down to rank and file at the bottom. And I know where this comes from. It comes from decades of police forces and other institutions, government agencies, big companies, corporations, who have been accused constantly of being racist, institutionally racist. That sinks in.
How do we get to a place?
You've got a management class that are petrified, absolutely petrified of being accused of that, and it seeps all the way down.
Well, absolutely. It'll bring down your whole career and everything else. But how do we get to a place as a multi-ethnic, multicultural society where everyone is able to be treated completely equally under the law? Is it possible? You know, when do we not need these anti-racist schemes? When do we not need the race action plan from the College of Policing? When do we not need DEI in every single organisation up and down the land? Very, very complicated. And in other circumstances, I'm not talking about the Henry Novak case, but in other circumstances, I do feel that it's very, very tough indeed for the police to manage all these intricate differences between groups and
look, sunlight is the best disinfectant as well. You've got to air these issues. You've got to talk about these issues. We do in this channel, and I think you were saying before, the Overton window shifted largely about this, you know, because of the likes of GBNews.
Fahima Mohammed, for example, admitting that there may be anti-white prejudice present. I'm not sure, maybe she would have said that 10 years ago. I don't know. Anyway, gbnews.com/your say. Do get in touch, but we're going to get to the headlines now.
Mark, Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. The family of Henry Novak's killer has apologised to the 18-year-old's family after he was murdered in Southampton. In a statement issued through the Sikh Press Association, Vikram Digwa's family said they were deeply sorry for the pain and suffering Henry's loved ones have endured. They also apologised to the Sikh community, saying Digwa's actions had unfairly brought it into disrepute. It comes after police released this distressing body cam footage showing Henry being handcuffed in his final moments after he had been fatally stabbed. Officers arrested him after Digwa falsely claimed he had been racially abused. The police watchdog is now investigating the circumstances of the incident. Well, politicians have been reacting to what they describe as the harrowing case, and among them Reform leader Nigel Farage, who says it raises serious questions about police judgment.
The last thing he heard on this earth was him being read his rights by the police. He was actually treated in a way that meant an accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder. What does he say? I can't breathe.
In other news, this lunchtime, the SNP's former chief executive Peter Murrell has been led from court in handcuffs after details were heard of how he embezzled £400,000 from the party. The High Court in Edinburgh was told the money came from membership fees and donations held in the party's bank accounts that Murrell had control of. Prosecutors said he made direct transfers, used party cards for personal purchases and falsified accounting records to cover his tracks. The court also heard items included a Jaguar worth more than £81,000, a £124,000 motorhome, more than £23,000 spent at a luxury stationery brand, and a £3,000 robotic lawnmower, which was described in the accounts as legal fees. The death toll from Russian strikes has risen to at least 17 now after one of Moscow's largest assaults in cities across the country. 100 more people were injured, including children, after overnight missile and drone attacks hit apartment blocks. Emergency crews have been searching through the rubble for hours for people feared trapped. It comes after Moscow had warned it would launch systematic strikes in response to a Ukrainian drone attack in Russian-held Luhansk. Yvette Cooper says that Lord Peter Mandelson should never have been appointed as Britain's ambassador to the United States. The Foreign Secretary described the release of messages about his appointment as an unedifying process, but said it was right for the government to be transparent. More than 1,000 pages of documents were published yesterday, including exchanges between Mandelson and senior ministers. But the Tories say the newly released files about Lord Mandelson's appointment show a failure visible from space. Well, among them, Shadow Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burkhardt, who told us this morning the release of those documents still leaves major gaps.
Once again, we discovered that Prime Minister had been told this guy carried on being friends with Epstein after Epstein had gone to prison. He was the director of a Russian defence firm that had supplied arms to Putin during Putin's invasion of Crimea. And he had very suspect business dealings in China and so on. And the Cabinet Secretary, Chief Civil Servant in the country, said at the time, if you're going to make this appointment, get his security vetting done first. Prime Minister ignored that, went and appointed him anyway, and then by January 2025, Mandelson's in Washington looking at highly classified information, despite not having any security vetting. It's completely wrong. It's a real abrogation of responsibility. It's very serious. It's why the Conservative Party have pushed so hard to get this information out in public.
Public confidence in the value of going to university has fallen sharply. The British Social Attitude Survey found a record 34% of people now believe that it's not worth the time or money. That's more than double the proportion who said the same thing in 2005. The findings come amid concern over student debt, graduate job prospects and financial pressure across the higher education sector. And Liverpool legend Sir Kenny Dalglish has revealed that he is undergoing treatment for cancer. The 75-year-old confirmed the diagnosis after what he described as an inadvertent social media post, saying his useless technology skills had forced his hand. Dalglish says he would have preferred the matter to remain private and asked for his family's privacy to be respected. Liverpool FC says the support, the best wishes and love of everyone are at the club are with Sir Kenny and his family. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news in half an hour next. A look at the lunchtime markets.
Taking the ups and downs in our stride. Stilts Home Lifts sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Just coming up to 12 minutes past 1, the markets for you. The pound will buy $1.3467 and €1.1566. The price of gold is £3,359 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 10,370 points.
GB News Finance Report, brought to you by Stilts Home Lifts.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 11 minutes past 1. Police have released distressing body cam footage showing the 18-year-old Henry Novak, and we are about to show them on screen, but we do so with the consent of Henry's family, who want people to see for themselves how the teenager was treated, their son, in the moments leading up to his death.
Here is Henry being handcuffed in his final moments after he was fatally stabbed in Southampton last December. The footage was shown in court as part of the trial. This is being shared as part of the media protocol, and after engaging with Henry's family throughout this process. One of the most shocking parts is when Henry cries out for help. Take a listen.
Been stabbed. You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate.
Yes, as he lays dying on the floor, Henry is handcuffed by the police, as you can see. The government, it's horrendous, it is heartbreaking, this footage, but the government is going to make a statement in the House of Commons today on this. Vikram Digwa, who murdered Henry, has now been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 21 years.
Of course, some of the debate over whether that was a long enough sentence that he will have to serve before he is eligible for parole, given all of the aggravating factors over, hiding of the knife, false accusations of racism, never coming forward and admitting that this young man had been stabbed. We're told it wouldn't have made a difference because of the fatal injuries that Henry had suffered. But regardless of that, it certainly is another aggravating factor in this really, really infuriating and sad case.
Well, absolutely. Let's speak to the former Defence Minister, Tobias Ellwood. Now, Tobias, we wanted to speak to you because you have, of course, in the army, worked in very hostile environments, and the police will have gone through training as part of their training to become a police officer on how to react when there is someone who is claiming to be hurt, injured, stabbed, whatever it is. How do you feel when you look at that footage there of how Henry Novak was treated by the police, and how should they have behaved in such a scenario?
Well, good afternoon. Can I first commend the way that you've comprehensively and the measured way that you've actually reported on what is a very tragic and also very, very sensitive event. I want to speak out and say that I'm saddened by some politicians who were very quick to make a comment. I'm pleased that Kemi Badenoch has pushed back to say that it's not right for parliamentarians to whip up anger and division at this moment as we understand the facts in more detail. Telling people, as Nigel Farage has done, that we should be furious is not the political leadership that helps us prevent escalation and indeed seeks to find solutions that can help prevent this matter from happening again. This is a tragic event, there's no doubt about it. We are still learning the facts. As you began in your introduction, there will be a statement in the Commons today. But we should make it clear that every police officer gets up in the morning, says goodbye to their loved ones. They don't know how their day is going to unfold. And we owe them a huge debt of gratitude because they do an incredible job in keeping our country safe. There are occasions when things go horribly wrong, and this is one of those cases. And it's quite right that there is a full investigation which will now take place to understand what happened. It seems that the information the police received from HQ as to who was the culprit, who was the victim, was mixed, and clearly there needs to be some assessment made so we better understand. If someone claims that they have been stabbed, it needs to be treated in that way. Whether it's in the army or indeed in the police force, the training that we have in the UK is second to none. It's some of the best in the world. And I am very, very sorry that in this particular case, standards have been seen to fall.
Yeah, I mean, on that issue of what to do when confronted by someone who claims to have been injured, in this case, of course, to have been stabbed, we know yourself, I mean, you helped PC Keith Palmer out in the moments after he was stabbed fatally at Parliament that day. You put your military training into action there. When you come across someone who claims they've been stabbed, it really is a case, isn't it, of, you need to get down and dirty, your bare hand or whatever, rub it up the bare back of the individual, up the stomach, looking for any evidence of blood. We didn't see anything like that happen in this case, but that's the kind of thing you would expect, isn't it?
It is absolutely right. The protocols that you then go through when somebody is known to have been stabbed, you're right. In my case, that military training kicked in. That decision-making that you make under pressure is quite incredible. It's very, very difficult indeed. It's why the training is kept going from the British perspective, the British police forces. It's not just once-off training. They go back for top-up training every single year to understand the tactical approaches in dealing with armed suspects, the rules of engagement, the risk assessments that are actually made, and also to try and de-escalate, to make sure that negotiation techniques are brought in as well. In this case, it was a complete misunderstanding as to who was the culprit, and the fact that there was a victim here that needed help, that did not need to be put into handcuffs, which simply compounded the situation. Many, many lessons here to be learned, but also, as I stress, I'm sorry it's not where you want to go with this perhaps interview, but for the politicians too, to recognise what sort of leadership, political leadership we require when the nation is watching every moment of this as it unfolds, to make sure that we actually move ourselves, we move Britain into a better place in dealing with these very, very difficult situations.
Just on that though, I understand you think Nigel Farage has gone too far with his comments, with his statement about this, talking about white lives and talking about anti-white hostility and all this and that. But is he not right to be angry? We saw after the killing of George Floyd that there was mass hysteria. You saw statues being pulled down. You saw protest riots on the street. You saw every single organisation under the sun, including our police, putting out anti-racist statements, talking about new training, more diversity and inclusion, talking about anti-racism. You don't just have to be not racist, you have to now be anti-racist. Do you not think that went too far and that there does need to be a shift?
You're raising an important point, which I wouldn't disagree with you, in the sense of where did that pendulum swing after what we saw with the reverberations from the George Floyd incident and the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. I remember in Bournemouth, they were trying to get rid of Lord Baden-Powell and his statue down there because he was deemed to have connections to the Hitler Youth movement. It turned out that he was actually on a list to be killed had Hitler taken over the UK. That didn't stop individuals in the heat of the moment wanting to, as they were doing across the country, to take these statues right across the country and throw them in the sea or indeed in the river. So you're right, I don't disagree with the sentiment of what you said, but in the heat of the moment, that is not the time to try and rally anger, which I'm afraid is what Nigel Farage has done. I agree with him on many things, but on this I absolutely push back. He did it previously with Southport, if you remember, and I'm afraid he's done it again. And I'm pleased that Kemi Badenoch and others have stepped forward to say, I understand the anger, but rallying behind anger is not political leadership. Political leadership is saying, what do we do next?
OK. Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed, former Defence Minister. Really appreciate your time.
OK, let's cross now to our political editor, Christopher Hope. He's just come from a briefing with the Prime Minister's official spokesperson. Christopher, any word on why we have heard very little, apart from one social media posting from the Prime Minister with regard to Henry Novak?
Yes, well, we asked that question directly of the PM spokesman just now, Mark, and they said, well, he responded after the sentencing yesterday. I can say to you that the Sir Keir Starmer last night watched the body cam footage of Henry Novak's death. He then used the meeting in the building behind me with his cabinet to pay tribute to this murdered young man, saying he was kind, thoughtful, and much loved. He had his life ripped away by an attacker who had shamelessly lied to him. The PM said that the thoughts of the whole cabinet are with Henry today. He had lain there, handcuffed and dying on the floor, the Prime Minister said. The PM spokesman also made clear that he extended his condolences to the family, adding that the PM could not have been clearer about his views about the harrowing nature of this case. Separately to that, Number 10 confirmed that the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, has now received multiple requests for a review of the 20-year, one-year minimum life sentence handed out to the attacker under the unduly sentencing scheme. Lord Herman has 28 days to decide what to do. On the issue of ceremonial knives, similar to the one used to kill Henry Novak, the government is not looking to ban Sikhs from carrying knives. Number 10 said we are not looking at that particular exception under the rules, saying that they echo the words of the judge who said in court yesterday that it was the moment the perpetrator removed the knife from its sheath that it became a murder weapon. The idea being that when the knife is sheathed and is there for display for a Sikh man, it is not a murder weapon until it's used in that sense. Number 10 also say they expect this IOPC investigation, the Independent Office of Police Conduct investigation, to be carried out as quickly as possible. The IOPC has now been in touch with the Novak family, we are told, and they've made clear, the IOPC, that it does have enough resources. The spokesman said this on the investigation by the IOPC on why on earth the police arrested a dying man and didn't believe he'd been stabbed. They say this: the IOPC investigation is independently investigating. We don't expect to prejudice those findings. We will wait for the response and update when that happens. And just finally on those lines again, just to be quite clear what the PM said. He said that Henry Novak was kind, thoughtful, much loved. His life had been ripped away in the most appalling circumstances. The PM said Henry's killer had shamelessly lied about him and then accused Henry of racism. The PM said that in his harrowing last moments, Henry was handcuffed by the police as he lay dying. So the PM does understand, and he's saying he understands, in the Cabinet today. We'll be hearing from Shabana Mahmood within the hour as this government, it seems to me, is ramping up its so far quite measured response on this issue and trying to, I think, meet the public where they are with this dreadful, dreadful story.
OK, Christopher Hope, thanks very much. Really appreciate that. Yeah, very thoughtful words from the Prime Minister. Why can't he come on camera and say this?
Well, does he feel passionately about it? That's the question, isn't it? This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up. Yes, of course, there is outrage as body cam footage is released showing the final moments of Henry Novak's life. He lay dying on the ground. He was handcuffed by the police as he desperately pled for help. We'll bring you more reaction. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late night TV shows. We're giving you a front row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. Police have released body cam footage showing the final moments of 18-year-old Henry Novak's life. A warning, what we're about to show on screen are obviously distressing images.
But we do so with the consent of Henry's family, who do want people to see for themselves how their son, how their family member was treated in the moments leading up to his death.
Well, we're now joined by Senior Fellow New Culture Forum, Dr. Philip Kisley. Thanks for speaking to us this afternoon. In terms of what we've been hearing about this debate now after Henry Novak's murder and the sentencing of his killer, you've got Nigel Farage, who's being criticised by quite a number of his political opponents, saying that he is just trying to whip up unrest here. But do you think that actually he has a point, that there are issues that need to be addressed, and what he wants to do is spark a debate?
Well, first of all, hello. And just to echo what other speakers have said, thank you for handling this terrible, terrible tragedy with such sensitivity and intelligence. No, I think Nigel is right to say what he said, because I think we need to be able to describe the problem before we can do anything about it. And I think that's what Nigel is doing. I don't think he's whipping up hatred, or he isn't sowing division. Believe me, there is enough division out there at the moment anyway. I think what politicians and the media and cultural figures, etc., all of these people have to do is acknowledge the sentiment and understand that there is anger out there. One of the reasons we're in this terrible position at the moment is that everybody has been shut down all the time, and we are in a situation now because of the long march through the institutions where we have education, the emergency services, the forces, the civil service, the heritage media, all of these things captured by an ideology that, as we have seen and is proved to us on many, many occasions, is detrimental to our well-being and now is positively lethal. If you have, sorry, just to make one final point, if you have a police service that is obsessed with anti-racism, then you will have police officers who are anti-racist first, and will see racism everywhere. If you have a police force that is overtaken by activists, you will have police officers who are activists who see racism everywhere. And that is why we're in the position we're in at the moment, and it's dangerous.
And Philip, does Kemi Badenoch not have a point, the Conservative leader, of course? She says, I don't want to hear about Black Lives Matter. I don't want to hear about White Lives Matter. We all matter. Enough of this nonsense where we keep separating everybody and splitting people into different groups. We're descending into tribalism. I do not want that, etc., etc. Essentially, Nigel Farage has been talking about anti-white prejudice. He's been talking about White Lives Matter. Does not Kemi have a point that there's no point in talking about this either way, you know? Either way round doesn't work?
No, I think we have to talk. I think that the problem we have in this society is that we've been shut down, and we are not allowed to talk about these things. So, no, I think we do need to talk. I think she's right in the sense that we do not want to descend into tribalism, but the reality is it is tribal out there. We live in a sectarian society.
Yeah, we're already there.
Identity politics has done that to us. So she's right in the sense that we need to dismantle these things. Our identity needs to be a common identity, which is British, which is patriotic. It's about the land we live in and who we are together, not these very niche identities which are set against each other, black versus white, queer versus heteronormative, and all of those things. It's all wrong. But this stuff, you can't just change these things overnight, Emily. These things, this activism has been happening in the institutions for the last 30 years. It isn't. One of the speakers was talking about BLM before. It didn't start with BLM. This started with identity politics in the 1990s.
It was just when it absolutely massively shifted what organisations were putting out there, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Philip Kisley, thank you very much indeed, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. There is so much to talk about today, Mark.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the difficulty is how do you go forward and address the issues that Philip was talking about there in a constructive way without being shut down? Because this is the problem in the past when people have had these concerns about the way in which institutions have been captured by the diversity agenda.
I mean, at one point you were a racist if you didn't put up a black square on your Instagram photo. You were a racist if you said all lives matter, and God forbid if you said white lives matter. Jesus, well, that was the end of your career.
Yeah, so and that's the issue. How do you push back in a constructive way without being shut down and, as you say, branded racist?
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Yes, the Mandelson files reveal the now Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden complained to Peter Mandelson that his Labour colleagues are constantly asking, who can we tax in order to pay benefits to others? Are Labour officially the party of handouts? All of that after your headlines.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. The lunchtime headlines. The family of Henry Novak's killer has now apologised to Henry's family, saying no one should have to carry the grief of losing a young life. Vikram Digwa's family was also apologising to the Sikh community, saying his actions had brought it into disrepute and asked that the tragedy is not used to inflame division. Nigel Farage is one of the politicians who has said Henry's treatment by officers raises serious questions about police judgment.
An accusation of a racial slur was treated more seriously than an act of murder.
Liverpool legend Sir Kenny Dalglish has revealed he is undergoing cancer treatment. The 75-year-old confirmed the diagnosis after what he described as an inadvertent social media post, saying his use of useless technology skills had forced his hand. Liverpool FC says the support, best wishes and love of everyone at the club are with Sir Kenny and his family. The SNP's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, has been led from court today in handcuffs after details were heard of how he embezzled £400,000 from the party. The High Court in Edinburgh was told that Murrell used membership fees and donations to buy cards, cars, luxury stationery and a motorhome before creating false invoices to cover his tracks. London Underground drivers have begun the first of two 24-hour strikes, causing major disruption across the capital today. RMT members walked out at midnight after last-minute talks with TfL failed. Little or no service is expected on several tube lines throughout the day, and a second strike is planned for Thursday. Those are the latest lunchtime headlines. More news at 2.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thanks, Sam. We've got the very thing for you. Microchips now inserted under the skin. Well, only if you've been a bad boy, of course. Do you think that's a good idea or not?
You make it sound racy. It's to track offenders, criminals.
I think there's some merit to this idea. Wow. We'll debate that after the break.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another very mixed day of weather across the United Kingdom today. Rain lingering in the far north of Scotland, heavy downpours elsewhere, mixed with hail and thunder. These are going to be lively showers rotating around an area of low pressure that is sitting across northern Scotland, and that's where this occluded weather front is going to linger through the rest of the day. So outbreaks of more persistent rain north of the central belt, although largely avoiding Shetland and Orkney where it's mostly dry. Further south, much of southern Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's slow-moving, heavy showers with some hail and thunder mixed in, gusty winds, but not feeling too cool, with temperatures still a degree or two above average, so in any brighter spells up to 22 Celsius. And there will be some brighter spells through the afternoon and evening, but watch out for these showers. There will be quite a few of them moving through on a stiff westerly breeze. Northern Ireland also seeing a number of showers, lots more cloud here, likewise for southern Scotland, but gaps in between the downpours. The rain across northern and western Scotland tending to ease through the evening, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by this stage, but mostly lightening and more patchy in nature before it moves away to the north. And then drier for many overnight, but still a number of showers moving in, especially across northern and western parts of the UK. And then we've got this next band of rain approaching from the Atlantic as the night progresses. A breezy night for many, so actually relatively mild, but not as stuffy as the nighttime was last week. Now, we start off Wednesday with outbreaks of persistent rain across Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales, heavy at times. That does move through, it turns brighter, but also, again, more showery across western areas into the afternoon. The rain moves into eastern and northern parts, a damp day to come for many.
Thank you, Britain, for all of you who listen to GB News Radio.
Whether you're at home or on the go, you're making us Britain's news channel and Britain's radio station.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is currently one lane restricted eastbound on the A46 this afternoon, causing slow-moving traffic through the affected stretch. Drivers on the A46 are advised to allow extra time for their journeys. Meanwhile, traffic on the M25 clockwise between Junction 15 and Junction 16 is moving steadily with no significant delays reported. On the trains, Chiltern Railways are experiencing major disruption to and from London Marylebone, while the Elizabeth line faces severe delays between London Paddington and Heathrow terminals extending to Reading. Plan accordingly if travelling by rail today. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Emily.
Pleasure to have you. Some of the comments have been very, what's the word? Lovely to you.
Yeah,
Lovely about you.
Yes, they're always.
Oh, Mark is fabulous. He can work with any presenter.
Well, I think our audience is just fantastic.
We don't say that about everyone, you know, Mark. Anyway, could our prisons be on the verge of going a bit sci-fi?
Well, yeah, tech bosses have suggested microchipping prisoners in order to track their movements in real time, with the theory being that it could clamp down on prisoners escaping.
However, the scheme has already been criticised as being dystopian and Big Brother gone mad.
Of course. We're joined now by the founder of the rehabilitation programme, Lived expert, Mark Johnson. Mark, thanks for joining us. You know, this seems like not a bad idea. Maybe it has merit. Is it that much different, really, to wearing an ankle tag for 6 months or a year?
Well, it is a little bit. You know, we talk about there's a thing called body autonomy. You know, how much do you want to remove from somebody who commits crime? We sentence people, we lock them up or restrict their movements and stuff on community orders. And what we don't acknowledge is all of the other losses which incur as well. So, and the impact of those losses, like children, etc. And also, you're dealing with a group of people, the majority of people that go to prison, not all, and especially today is a very sensitive day for sure. but also the media generates sensationalism anyway.
Okay,
with the
Mark Johnson,
murderism.
sorry, I'm terribly sorry. We have to interrupt you because Shabana Mahmood is speaking in the House of Commons.
Of 21 years. His mother, Kiran Kaur, has been convicted of assisting an offender. She is due to be sentenced on 17th of July. And today, the Crown Prosecution Service has authorised further charges against other members of the attacker's family. With further sentencing and possible charges pending, we must be cautious still in what we say about this case, so that we do not place any proceedings at risk. However, I can and must pay tribute today to the dignified and powerful words of the Novak family in the statement they gave after yesterday's sentencing. They deserve answers. They deserve answers in particular about what happened on that awful night and the actions of the police officers who arrived on the scene. I expect many in this House and many more across this country have now seen the police officers' body cam footage released last night. It is, without question, a disturbing and tragic thing to see. People are rightly asking questions about how the situation was handled, and they are shocked and disquieted to hear Henry's words, "I can't breathe." I know that it is difficult to wait any longer for answers, but there is a proper process to assess whether there have been incidents of police misconduct, led by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the IOPC. They will determine what could and should have been done differently. They will determine what action may need to be taken against individual officers. The family yesterday called on me, and I quote, to ensure the IOPC has the resources, authority and independence it needs to conduct a full, fearless and transparent investigation. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm to you today that I will do so. The IOPC will be equipped and encouraged to act to find the truth and to ensure, if necessary, that there are consequences. There have been accusations, I know, of two-tier policing, that one community has been prioritised over another. It will be for the IOPC to determine the facts with regard to this specific case, and I cannot and will not comment on them. But let me say this on the question of preferential treatment more widely. The police in this country have a sacred duty to police without fear or favour. Everyone in this country is equal before the law. It is the promise upon which our whole justice system rests, and the equality of every citizen is the foundation on which the openness, tolerance and generosity of this country rests. Let me also be clear about one other thing, a dangerous undercurrent that I have seen in the reaction to this awful crime. Threats against police officers are utterly unacceptable. There can be no justification for intimidation, abuse or attempts to take the law into one's own hands. A police officer unrelated to this case has been misidentified online and subjected to death threats. He has been forced to relocate to protect himself and his family. Misinformation and inflammatory commentary is making a dreadful situation even worse. We must all, together, condemn it. And we must also allow the facts to be established through the appropriate investigations and the courts, and we must do so calmly and responsibly. The Novak family and Henry's memory deserve answers. They have also called on us all to take action. Action to address the daily tragedy of knife crime in this country. This government is committed to halving knife crime in this decade. And since the start of this parliament, we have made progress. Knife crime has fallen by 10%. Knife homicides are down 27% at their lowest level in a decade. But clearly, we must do more, whilst there are still tragedies like this one. And for that reason, we have recently published our Halving Knife Crime Plan. It sets out how we will go further to drive sustained reductions in violence. It brings together action across government and across society to stop people from turning to knife crime and to ensure that perpetrators are caught and brought to justice. Amongst a range of measures, this will see schools and families supported to address the root causes of knife crime through the establishment of 50 Young Futures hubs. Police using new crime mapping tools to target enforcement more precisely and making better use of stop and search. and cruel and exploitative drug gangs stopped from criminally exploiting children, preventing the knife violence that is driven by the county lines trade. In relation to knife controls, there have been calls to limit the right of Sikhs to carry their ceremonial knife, the kirpan, one of the 5 holy items in their faith. The Offensive Weapons Act of 2019, passed under the previous government, clarified and strengthened existing legal protections in relation to long kirpans. This included extending defences so that kirpans can be lawfully possessed for religious reasons and used in religious and ceremonial contexts. But let me be clear, carrying a knife for the purpose of religious observance is one thing. Using it, as so tragically occurred in this case, is quite another. It is a vile act, a crime of the utmost severity, and it will be met with the severest punishment. Yesterday, the Novak family ended their statement with a powerful call to us all. I quote, "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred, or tension." They quoted the words of the prosecuting lawyer. And I quote again, Mr. Speaker, "This is not a case about Sikhism. This is not a case about racism. This is a case about murder." I echo those words. We cannot allow this murder to turn communities against one another. We must condemn those who seek personal political profit from tragedy. Instead, we must show who we really are in this country. This was a murder, a vile and violent crime. The punishment must be reserved for those who are responsible for the act. We do not believe in collective punishment in this country. Instead, we stand together against an act of pure evil. We condemn those who committed this heinous crime, not all those who share their faith or their ethnicity. Yesterday, a sentence was handed down in court. I know it will never be enough. The loss felt by Henry Novak's family and friends will last forever. A wonderful young man will never enjoy the promise of the life that stretched out before him. The evil acts of his murderer and accomplice will never be undone. But we can choose to use this moment to pursue positive change. We are still limited in what we can say. There is a sentence to be handed down and further charges may follow, and there is an IOPC investigation ongoing. But I call on everyone here to be responsible in this moment to allow justice to run its full course. But while we must be limited in what we can say, we must not be limited in how we act. I will end with the words of the Novak family once more. Last night, they wrote that no other family should experience the heartbreak and horror of losing a child to knife crime. Let that be the challenge to us all, across this House, across government and across society. It is the very least we can do to honour the memory of Henry Novak. Mr. Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Chris Phillips, Shadow Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for ensuring the government came to the House today. The murder of Henry Novak is devastating for his family. He was an innocent young man on the way home when he was brutally killed. Henry's family have suffered an unimaginable loss, and I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with them all. The evil murderer, Vikram Digwa, lied from start to finish, including a false allegation of racism. But on arriving at the scene, the police appeared more concerned with the accusation of racism and even the possibility that Digwa himself was injured than they were in helping Henry. Henry told the police he could not breathe 9 times. He told them he had been stabbed 4 times. The response from the officer, we've all heard, was to say, "I don't think you have, mate." Henry was handcuffed and dragged across the ground as he lay dying. Can you imagine what he must have felt as he cried out for help and was ignored, as the officers who should have worked to save him instead handcuffed him and inquired after the welfare of his killer, standing just inches away. Henry's dad, Mark, said this: "Henry did not die with dignity. He did not die with the care he deserved. He lost consciousness before anyone believed him." So we need the IOPC to urgently and transparently report into how it was the police attending were more concerned with the accusation of racism than they were in helping a dying man. Mr. Speaker, we cannot tolerate a situation where false allegations of racism by criminals are believed. We cannot allow the colour of someone's skin to be a consideration in how the police or other public services treat people. And yet this has happened. Just recently, we learned that Valdo Calicone, who murdered 3 people in Nottingham, was not sectioned by mental health professionals because they thought there was, and I quote, an over-representation of young black males in mental health detention. The consequent failure to section Valdo Calicone, in part because he was black, led directly to the murder of 3 innocent people. The head teacher of Axel Radicubana was accused of racist stereotyping when she described Radicubana as a threat to safety, and the risk assessment was watered down. Radicubana, of course, went on to stab and murder 3 young girls at a Southport dance class. But, Mr. Speaker, this has not happened by accident. It is enshrined in the police's own policy documents. The police anti-racism commitment, published in March 2025 by the NPCC and the College of Policing, urges police forces to reverse engineer the same arrest rates between ethnic groups, even though the offending rates are different, by treating different ethnic groups differently. Let that sink in for a moment. An official police document actually says people should be treated differently based on the colour of their skin. I've said before at this dispatch box at least twice that document should be withdrawn. The dangerous ideology of so-called anti-racism, allowing people to be treated differently based on race, must end. Extreme activists have hijacked the policy-making process, and this is where it has led. It has no place in policing, it has no place anywhere. So does the Home Secretary agree that the so-called police anti-racism commitment must urgently be withdrawn? It is morally wrong and it is dangerous as well. Police forces must focus on catching criminals and keeping the public safe. They must simply treat everyone exactly the same. I want to finish with Mark Novak's words yesterday, Henry's father. He said this: Henry was 18. He was kind, ambitious, loved, and full of promise. He had his whole life ahead of him. But that future was stolen from him, and no verdict and no sentence will ever give it back. Mr. Speaker, it is true that nothing can bring Henry back. But let us make sure that no one ever again experiences what Henry did in his last tragic moments.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank the Shadow Home Secretary for his remarks and for the tone in which he's reflected on this horrific murder and the words of the family, which obviously he knows I share as well. Let me just say his initial point, I would normally let it slide, Mr. Speaker, but I think there's far too much misinformation floating around social media for me to just leave this one unchallenged. On the government coming to the House, he will know that the proceedings and sentencing concluded at 4 o'clock yesterday, and we said we would come immediately thereafter to the House, and we have presented ourselves here today. We have responded in an appropriate way with all of the facts at our disposal and all of the judges' remarks at our disposal for our review before coming to this House, and I think it's important that we respond in these moments in a measured way, and that is what we, the government, have sought to do. He referred to evidence in relation to the Valdo Calicane inquiry. He will know that the inquiry into the Nottingham attacks is well underway, and I don't think it would be appropriate for me from this dispatch box to preempt any findings that the inquiry might make. But of course, all of the actions and assumptions made by professionals of different public services, including the police and the health service, are subject to scrutiny within that inquiry. I'm sure those are matters that we will return to as that inquiry reports. He did refer to the findings of phase 1 of the Southport inquiry in relation to those horrific murders and the findings in relation to how the public service systems in that case in relation to Axel Rudab-Cabana centred the danger he might have posed to himself given his mental health diagnosis and did not take into account the danger he posed potentially to others. There have been recommendations, he will know, that have been made for change in this area, which the government will respond to fully in due course. But let me be very clear with him and all members in this House, in all such matters in terms of how we engage with our public services and how they assist risk, the only important factor is the risk an individual poses, not their race, not their religion, or indeed anything else. And we will not tolerate a situation where other irrelevant factors are taken into account. I repeat again, all are equal before the law, and every public service needs to bear that in mind. He referred to the police anti-racism commitment. He will obviously remember, I'm sure, that the race action plan for the police began life under the previous Conservative government. In fact, I'm old enough to remember when Theresa May called out disproportionate use of stop and search for black communities in particular. He will know that the way that policing works in this country is by consent. It is important that the police retain the confidence of all of the communities that they police, and that there has, I think he would acknowledge, been a history and a context here relating to racism and the police. Whatever changes are made, it is important that nobody overcorrects or course corrects such that all of us as citizens are no longer equal before the law. And this government will always ensure that in fulfilling their sacred duties to keep our communities safe, that the police always act without fear and favour and always ensure that every citizen is treated equally. But I'm sure he wouldn't want to do down or ignore historic and legitimate concerns that there have been from some communities about institutional racism as well as differential treatment. I condemn all types of differential and every type of differential treatment. I do not stand for it. My own track record as a government minister shows I will always act when there is evidence of differential treatment, and it is absolutely vital that that message is heard loud and clear across the whole of our country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for her statement. Henry was a popular and much-loved student at the University of Southampton, and his murder has horrified our city. I know both my honourable friend, the member for Southampton Test, and I want to commend everyone at the university for their response and support for the university community following this tragedy. Mr. Speaker, like many, I've watched the body cam footage, and it is both heartbreaking and infuriating. It makes it plain for all to see how Henry posed no threat that would warrant being handcuffed, and yet was treated as a criminal based on the lies of his murderer. Now, no one in their right mind thinks that one Sikh or one or two police officers represents all Sikhs or the entire police force. As Henry's father has said, this is about murder, about our response to it, and about our prevention of it. So I have two questions for my right honourable friend. We have a knife problem in this country. That's why we've taken early steps to ban zombie knives.
OK, well, there we heard from the Home Secretary delivering a statement on the murder of Henry Novak, and then we heard the response from Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary. The Home Secretary did acknowledge that people are rightly asking questions about how the situation was handled, what could and should have been done differently. She said, with regard to the calls from the family to ensure the IOPC investigation has the resources, authority, independence to conduct a full and fearless investigation. She says, yes, I will do, and consequences will come if necessary. She said she wouldn't comment on accusations of two-tier policing. She said that's not her place to do so. She also spoke about calls to limit the Sikh kirpan. That's the knife that was used in this murder. She seemed to suggest that there were going to be no changes in the law, didn't she, Mark?
Yeah, and on that issue of two-tier policing, our political editor, Christopher Hope there, Shabana Mahmood said, absolutely, the police should police without fear or favour. Something else, of course, that Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, raised there, Christopher.
Yes, Mark and Emily, that's right. I mean, I think the government's got to get on the front foot now on this one. They've been, frankly, too quiet for too long. We saw the PM do a tweet last night. For the first time, he responded to the guilty verdict last week in the killing of Henry Novak. And now we have the Home Secretary talking to MPs. It was going to be the Crime Minister, Sarah Jones. And clearly, Number 10 of the Home Office felt it needed a bigger response, a more front-footed response from the most senior person in charge of law and order in this country. Now, Shabana Mahmood just said then, there's a dangerous undercurrent in the wake of the killing that has seen death threats towards police. She said one officer had already been misidentified and had to move out of his home to protect himself and his family. She said the police have a sacred duty to police without fear or favour. Well, we all agree that. Everyone in this country is equal before the law. It's a promise upon which our whole justice system stands, and the equality of every citizen is the foundation on which the openness, tolerance and generosity of this country rests. So she criticised misinformation and the issues here of threats to the police. She also said that we as a country can't allow the murder of Henry Novak to turn communities against one another. This was a murder, a vile and violent crime. The punishment must be reserved for those who are responsible for the act. And on the issue of the kirpan, this ceremonial sword, although I'm not entirely sure the actual kirpan was used in this attack, maybe a different knife. I think we've heard that from the Sikh community today. But on that very point, Ms Mahmood said this: carrying a knife for the purpose of religious observance is one thing. Using it, as so tragically occurred in this case, is quite another. It's a vile act, a crime of the utmost severity, and will be dealt with the severest punishment. Now, in the lobby briefing earlier I had with the Prime Minister's spokesman, they made clear they are not looking at stopping Sikh men carrying knives around the country on the streets. What they said, and they support the judge, the PM spokesman said, was that when that knife is unsheathed, that's when it becomes a dangerous weapon, and that's where they left it. So there we are. It seems to me like Shabana Mahmood is trying to just calm it down. You heard earlier from Nigel Farage talking about the fact he used the response of one of cold fury, he said, didn't he? We've also heard this morning from Kemi Badenoch. She is upset, and she sees this as a moment in our policing history akin to the murder of Stephen Lawrence and the associated Macpherson report, when the police have got to work out who they're policing, how they're policing, not worry about being called racist or not racist, but deal, frankly, with a dying young man on the ground who's bleeding out, who needs support and kindness, not to be told that the police don't believe him when he's been stabbed in the face and the back and then handcuffing him.
Yeah, Chris, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, asked whether the Home Secretary believes the police anti-racism commitment should be urgently withdrawn. He claimed that that does encourage police officers to treat people differently depending on their race. The Home Secretary pointed the finger at the Conservatives and said, well, you know, Theresa May back in the day talked about how there should be less stop and search potentially, or black people are being treated differently, etc., etc. So she wouldn't be drawn on that, really.
Well, Emily, I think the Labour has got a point. They can and should point the fingers at the Tory party in power for 14 years, when so much of this refocusing of policing appears to have been done. Sir Keir Starmer did watch the footage we all saw last night, although I personally couldn't watch all of it. It was too upsetting. He did see that last night. He paid tribute at the top of the cabinet briefing with all the top people in the government at 9:30 today. He said that Henry was kind, thoughtful and much loved. He said his life had been ripped away by the attacker who had shamelessly lied to the police. He said the thoughts of his whole cabinet were with the family of Henry Novak today. He had lain on the floor handcuffed and dying, and it was just so sad about that, and the harrowing nature of this case. Now, he also disclosed that the Attorney General has had multiple requests to review that 21-year minimum life tariff. Kemi Badenoch told me it should be 25 years, and we'll see how that plays out. And also, they're looking at this IOPC investigation. It should conclude as quickly as possible. But as things stand, Emily and Mark, the government is not ordering some kind of thematic review. They are simply looking at this narrow case through this group called the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Conduct.
Yeah, OK, Christopher, thanks very much indeed. Before we just throw back to the comments in a second, I just want to say I thought Chris Philp, in what he said there in terms of the concerns that he had that race played a part in the decision-making of those officers was a good point, because he raised the issue around Nottingham and Valdo Calacane and how social workers in that case were reluctant to put Valdo Calacane into, custody, to section him because of the number of black people already having been sectioned. And if you think back as well to the Manchester Arena bombings, you had a security guard then who was scared to confront Salman Abedi, the bomber, because of his ethnicity, concerned that he would be accused of being Islamophobic.
Oh, absolutely. Christopher, we'll speak. Oh, sorry, go on, Chris.
Well, Mark, I think Mark entirely nails it. I mean, it shouldn't be the case that the police are more worried about being seen as racist and ignoring someone who's been knifed several times, including one in the face on the ground, and not believing that individual and then handcuffing him. Something has gone dreadfully wrong, possibly in the training of police, and needs to be looked at. Currently, the government is only committing to an IOPC review of what happened in this case, but the question mark surely is, should that be expanded further?
Okay.
I think it should. Thank you, Chris.
Right, we're going to return to the House of Commons where Shabana Mahmood is continuing to take responses from MPs.
As I say, our police officers every single day run towards danger in order to keep us safe. I will always scrutinise all these actions to make sure that our police service is functioning as it should be, so that every single citizen in our country, regardless of the colour of their skin or the faith that they have or may not have, can be absolutely certain that they will always be treated equally, and that whatever complaint they have will always be investigated in the way that we would all expect.
Amanjeet Singh Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I am deeply saddened by the murder of Henry Novak, and my heartfelt condolences to his family, whose pain was made all the worse by the police wrongly handcuffing Henry, believing the lies of the violent murderer. And that stripped Henry of his dignity in his agonising final moments, something which should never happen again. But also, Mr. Speaker, what's very galling is that the likes of Reform, Restore and the far right decided to politicise people's pain, attacking the Sikh community for wearing the kirpan and wanting it banned, even though the kirpan was not used in this violent attack. And they've decided to scapegoat and throw under the bus an entire community based on the actions of one violent murderer. And let me also give them a history.
You're meant to be going through the chair, not across the chamber.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. And let it not be said that we see them and we will stand up to them. And let me also give a short history lesson, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I started this session by tolerance and respect, and I don't expect to be pointing at each other and attacking each other. You work through the chair. We want an orderly chamber that is respectful. This does nobody any good. I think...
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, because hundreds of thousands of Sikh soldiers bravely fought alongside British soldiers during both World Wars. Tens of thousands made the ultimate sacrifice, proudly wearing their turban and their kirpan. So what reassurances can my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, give to the Sikh community, which is both horrified and ashamed at this brutal murder, and they are fearful of their right to freely and peacefully practice their faith?
Well, let me reiterate for my honourable friend, religious freedom is a very important principle that this government respects, that has been respected by different governments of different party political persuasions, and I'm sure that will continue to be the case. As I said in my statement, we are not a country that collectively punishes an entire group of people for the actions of individuals. The responsibility for this murder rests with the murderer, and he has now faced justice and been sentenced, and that is the right way for these matters to proceed. Let me also say something, Mr. Speaker, on the tone of this debate. I think it would be right for the whole House to remember, I'm sure Henry Novak's family and his friends are watching, and the way we conduct ourselves in this place can of course be passionate, but must not result in name-calling and also in just shouting different political views here, because I don't think we should all stand for a politicisation of this murder. There are lessons to be learnt, and I'm sure further issues to be drawn from what has happened once the IOPC has concluded its investigation. I'm sure we will debate them here in the future as well, but the way that we conduct that debate matters just as much, in my view, as what is said.
Lewis Cocking.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an appalling and sickening tragedy. Words cannot express my heartbreak for Henry's family and fury at the system that has led to this. We have all seen the body-worn video, and in a previous role, as part of my job, it was my job to review that footage and give an independent judgment. In this case, it is clear to everyone that the police did not use appropriate and proportionate action. There are many good police officers who work hard to keep us safe. But on that night, those police officers displayed no concern for Henry. Immediate actions should have been taken to try and save his life. But instead, Henry was put in handcuffs and mocked as he lay dying. Those police officers have serious questions to answer. Can the Home Secretary explain what action the government will now take to ensure that every officer involved is held accountable for the decisions that they have made, and so that the public can have confidence that we'll all be treated equally under the law?
Well, let me give the honourable gentleman that assurance by referring to the fact that the IOPC is investigating this matter, and they will be free to conclude that investigation using all of the powers that they have and also all of their evidence-gathering abilities. He will know, having reviewed such footage in the past, of course, what is publicly available is 3 minutes of a much longer incident, but the IOPC will be able to review every bit of body cam footage, all of it in its totality, as well as other evidence that sheds light on the context of the incident and also what the police officers saw and how they reacted to it. The IOPC is free to make recommendations not just on specific conduct but also on wider lessons that should be drawn. Let me reassure him, once the IOPC has reported and made its findings, I will make sure that I personally update the House.
Jen Craft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to pay tribute to my constituent Henry Novak, a bright young man at the start of a life that held so much promise. The turnout at his funeral and the outpouring of community support show that he had an impact well beyond his young years. I'd like to pay tribute to his family, Mark Novak particularly, his father. Many here have quoted his words, calling that Henry's death does not lead to more division and hatred. His sister Olivia made space in the early days of her own grief to support Henry's friends. I think that speaks to this family and their courage and their bravery and their dignity in dealing with one of the most tragic and devastating things that any of us could ever imagine going through. Like many in this House, I've watched the body-worn video camera footage that was released last night, and I watched it with horror. I cannot imagine what Henry's family felt seeing that and knowing that that was their son's last moments. They expected help from the police, but when Henry lay dying, what he got was accusation and he was disbelieved. This can never happen again. I would like to ask the Home Secretary what she will do to meet Henry's family's calls. First of all, to tackle the national emergency that is knife crime. Like many families who have suffered a loss from this appalling crime, Henry's family have called that his death has not been in vain, that lessons are learnt, and that they can go forward to see that his legacy is that no one else has to suffer that grief. And secondly, I would welcome the Home Secretary's assurances that the IOPC investigation will be thorough Borough will be fully resourced, that no stone will be left unturned, that the family will have the answers they need and deserve. They will know why their son was treated as a criminal and why the criminal was treated with much more dignity than their son was. And I would be grateful if she would speak to make sure that the family's needs, their wishes, and that their voices are heard throughout this inquiry.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first pay tribute to my honourable friend for her powerful contribution as Henry's constituency member of Parliament. Let me firstly give her absolutely the assurance that she seeks in relation to the IOPC investigation. I know that that investigation is continuing at pace. I know that the family is being engaged with. If there are any concerns about that process, I do invite her to let me know immediately, and I will personally ensure that any concerns are dealt with and that the family can have confidence in the IOPC process. Let me say also on knife crime, this government has acknowledged the absolute epidemic of knife crime in our country and the imperative that we have to act upon it. It's why we have our landmark commitment to halve knife crime over a decade, why we have launched the Knife Crime Action Plan. It is a resourced package of measures designed to deal with the scourge of knife crime. And let me give her this reassurance, and exactly as I said in my statement earlier, we will leave no stone unturned to deal with knife crime in our country, and we do so in the name of all victims of knife crime, including Henry. Their lives must not be in vain, and we must learn the lessons that prevent these tragedies from occurring in the future.
Robert Jenry.
When Henry lay on the floor, he warned that he had been stabbed 4 times. He said that he couldn't breathe 9 times. And yet the officer chose to cuff him rather than treat him. That officer should be in court being prosecuted for a total dereliction of duty. But the bigger question is this: why do officers behave in this way? Is it because they have been taught repeatedly to elevate perceptions of ethnic minority communities over the safety of white British people? That sickness contributed to the killings of Rudakabana, of Kalakone in Nottingham, and now to Digwa, is a sickness rooted in the anti-racism agenda. Will the Home Secretary root it out? Will she return to equality before the law for all? And will she say that when it comes to public safety, white lives matter just as much as anyone else's?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say to the honourable gentleman, I don't think this is a moment to pit white Britons against non-white Britons. This is a moment to reflect on a horrific tragedy. He knows full well that the IOPC is investigating the conduct of those police officers. It would be wholly inappropriate for a member of this House to seek to preempt an independent investigation into the potential misconduct of police officers. That IOPC investigation will look at individual conduct, but also what other wider lessons can be learnt from this case. I will personally ensure that all lessons are learned and indeed acted upon. And let me also say it is a fundamental principle, not just of the British criminal justice system, but who and what we are as a country, that we are all equal before the law of our land. That applies regardless of the colour of your skin. That applies whether you're a non-white Brit whose family arrived here 50 years ago or 10 years ago, or if you're a white Brit whose family have been here for about 300 years or more. We are all equal before the law of our land, and we should all support that principle, but not use it so as to pit our citizens against one another. That is not what this moment demands.
Florence Session-Lurby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for coming to the Chamber this afternoon. And as many honourable and right honourable members have said, no one can be moved after watching that footage and just seeing a young life being wasted like that. But I think just the inhumane and degrading treatment that Henry had to go through in his last few moments is something that will stay with the family, something that will stay with the family when the news coverage has moved on, something that will stay with the family after those police officers are being prosecuted, because when someone is killed by a murderer who is intent on killing, regardless of your race, it is the families and the communities that have to deal with the long-term impact. Many of us in this chamber have had to comfort constituents who've lost a family member through knife crime. And this epidemic across the UK has to come to a stop. How is it possible that this killer was allowed to roam the streets with a 21-centimetre knife and freely stab someone and then lie. It is really important that we do make sure that this government gets to grips with that. So I want to ask the Home Secretary, as soon as the IOPC conclude and find the findings of this investigation, will she come back to this House and make sure that the government adequately responds so that we are not back here again having to answer and try to console another family whose life has been taken by knife crime?
Secretary.
I thank my honourable friend. Let me give her that reassurance. I think it is right, whilst the IOPC investigation is taking place, that we give that the space it needs to do its important work, and it would be wholly wrong for ministers to try to preempt what findings might be made in the future. But as soon as those findings are made, I will ensure the government responds.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement this afternoon, and just say that I think we all in this House need to be careful of our response to what is a sad loss of life of a young man who was going to a vibrant university in a fantastic and welcoming city with the rest of his life supposedly ahead of him. Notwithstanding what the Home Secretary has said, and I'm grateful for her saying that the IOPC will receive full resourcing, has she done any thinking as to what other investigations her department might need to do into the conduct of Hampshire Constabulary? Can she confirm whether the officers in question have been suspended pending the investigation? And also, could she outline whether she's currently looking at whether she needs to make changes to the exemptions to carrying knives for religious or cultural purposes?
Secretary.
I thank the honourable member for his contribution and his questions. Let me say to him on the question of suspensions, that is a matter for the IOPC because of the way that they make their initial findings and then obviously react to the evidence as it all becomes available. And of course, now that the criminal proceedings have concluded, they will be able to ramp up and go faster on that process. So again, it wouldn't be appropriate for ministers to be either cited on that or seek to direct it in any way, but I know that staff at the IOPC are watching, and to the extent that there are clarifications or questions that need answering, I'm sure that they will respond, but they are wholly independent of government. Let me say to him on the exemptions for the carrying of knives for the purposes of religious ceremonial purposes. This has been a long-standing part of our arrangements as a way of balancing public safety alongside religious freedom. It has been supported by successive governments, including this one. So we are not seeking to move away from our respect for religious freedom. The wider sort of context is an important question. It is always worth serious consideration. But for myself, I think my approach here will be to engage directly with representatives from the Sikh community and also knife crime campaigners. I think these are issues of a common cause rather than pitting those two groups against one another. But I would just repeat the point I made in my statement. There is a world of difference between a person acting out of religious observance, carrying something as an act of faith, and somebody unsheathing that weapon and using it to kill somebody, and that individual has met the full force of the law.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, there is no bigger champion for policing in this House than me. But the body-worn footage of Henry Novak's death is gut-wrenching. And the police response is, on the basis of what we know so far, unfathomable. So it's right that the IOPC is investigating, but very often these investigations, as everyone around policing knows, have taken far, far too long, sometimes many years, which is not good for anybody involved. So can the Home Secretary assure me that she will press the IOPC to report as quickly as possible, most of all for Henry's family?
Secretary.
My honourable friend speaks powerfully from deep personal, professional experience, which I pay tribute to. Let me assure him that I, as a constituency member of Parliament, have had many concerns about the length of time it takes the IOPC sometimes to report, concerns that I've raised with them directly since I've been Home Secretary. On this occasion and in relation to this case, however, I do think, given that the investigation started in December, the criminal investigation and case has only just concluded in relation to the murderer, and given that the IOPC have said they expect to report within 3 months, I do believe that this investigation is proceeding at the pace that this House would expect. And I'm sure the IOPC are reflecting on the tenor of the debate today and will understand the need for urgency and to make sure the family have answers as quickly as is humanly possible.
Ms Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My thoughts are with Henry Novak's family, friends and the local community. The prosecution said the perpetrator had a weapons obsession. It should not have been so easy for somebody with a weapons obsession to amass an arsenal of knives. What is the Minister doing to reduce the availability of dangerous knives on our streets?
Secretary.
The Honourable Lady makes a really important point. She will know that we have legislated. The Crime and Policing Act became law just a few short weeks ago. The measures within that Act will be implemented at pace by this government, but they relate to the possession of weapons, the buying of weapons, whether online or elsewhere, new duties on sellers of knives to report larger sales or bulk sales of knives. The government has taken a broad range of measures in order to deal with the scourge of knife crime in our country. Those measures have just become law. We will ensure that the law is implemented as quickly as possible so that we can get on top of this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The death of Henry Novak is a horrifying tragedy, and my thoughts are with his family, friends and community. As a House, we must honour the words of his father not to use this tragedy to create further hatred or division or tension, and the House should not go against those wishes. They want action so no other family goes through what they are going through right now. Will my right honourable friend guarantee that she will go further and faster to tackle knife crime so no one fears walking the streets of the UK?
Home Secretary. Let me say simply to my honourable friend, she makes a powerful point, and yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Please, can the Home Secretary ensure that the IOPC report or the findings from the report are shared with Police Scotland and, in fact, with all police forces across these islands in order to ensure that any recommended structural or procedural changes and lessons can be learned by all forces and then can be implemented?
Home Secretary. The Honourable Lady makes a very good point, and let me say to her that although of course some of these responsibilities are devolved, I do hope that other legislators in our country will show interest here, and certainly myself and my ministers do engage with our partners in devolved administrations, and we will continue to do so and discuss this matter as well.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I also want to thank the Home Secretary for her statement. Madam Deputy Speaker, as an Amritdhari Sikh, I wear the 5Ks every day, part of my religious observance, including the Qurban. And as a Sikh, I really struggle to express the feelings of sheer horror that this case has generated within me, my family and my friends. It's absolutely, it has been horror. The senseless murder of Henry Novak should be condemned in its entirety by everybody. And a young man's life has been taken in his prime, and I wish to express mine and my constituency full sympathy and condolences for the family of Henry Novak, who have shown incredible dignity in their grief. Madam Deputy Speaker, I totally condemn the action of Vikram Digwar, the mindless the senseless murder, the lies, and there is simply no religious justification for his actions. And I'm relieved that our criminal justice system and the courts came to the same conclusion, and that is a sentiment that is shared universally across the Sikh community. Madam Deputy Speaker, this case has raised many aspects of concern to my constituents, Sikh and non-Sikh. These include issues of safety, knife crime, and issues of freedom to practice one's faith. So will the Secretary of State meet with me and colleagues to discuss these issues further?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his contribution, and let me again emphasise the dignity and the grace shown by Henry's family. Their response has been something I don't believe I would have been capable of if I had been in their shoes, and it is an example to us all. Let me say to him, on the broader issues, there will be many issues in relation to this case. Once the IOPC investigation is concluded, we'll be able to draw further conclusions as to the facts, the police response and wider problems as well. Always happy to discuss with him the different nature of the issues raised in this case, and in particular on how we get the right balance between the religious freedoms that he and I both enjoy as members of faith minorities in our country, and also the need to make sure that public protection is never compromised.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Henry Novak's tragic murder was sadly stark proof that we have become a country where we no longer treat everyone as equal under the law. Does the Home Secretary agree it is time to put a stop to the political correctness that has overpowered common sense policing? And will she commit to and end the nonsense of police cultural competency training being put ahead of protecting every citizen regardless of race?
Let me reiterate my belief and expectation that the police must always act without fear or favour and treat all citizens equally before the law. I hope she will recognise that the vast majority of our police officers run towards danger every day to keep us all safe, and in the vast majority of cases they get the absolute balance right between how they respond to a specific case and also more broadly how they keep communities safe. Where there are issues, lessons must be learned, and I'm sure once the IOPC investigation is concluded, we will do so.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think for all of us as MPs, the time we spend with families who lose a family member in horrific circumstances stays with us throughout our career. And I know in my community there'll be many parents who sadly lost children to knife crime who will have seen Mark Nowak's statement and felt every single word and want to send their condolences to the family. They will also be acutely aware of how a difficult watch that body camera footage was, and his words about not seeing the tragedy used to inflame division. Given that, and given how some people are interpreting this matter and the misinformation that is circulating, I wonder what thought the Home Secretary has given to how we can have trusted sources of information about this issue, because there is an important need for scrutiny and transparency about what has happened, and in that context where there is so much misinformation, we need sources of light, not heat. What more could the Home Office do on that matter, please?
Home Secretary. Well, let me say to my honourable friend, we in the Home Office have a responsibility that we seek always to fulfil, to make sure that we act calmly and responsibly with the full facts at our disposal. And if we do not have the full facts at our disposal, we wait until we do before we comment, so as not to put out misleading or false information. The wider environment, she is right, is very challenging. And of course the government is taking action by other government departments in relation to Online Safety Act and other digital platforms. I'm sure those are conversations we will return to, because there is no doubt on social media in particular, the environment is very challenging for making sure that the truth is able to be established rather than misinformation and straight up lies as well. I think we have a responsibility also in this House collectively to make sure that we are the ones that shine light rather than heat on these matters, so that we can hold our country together and make sure that all of our citizens are treated fairly.
Sammy Wilson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and our sympathies go out to the family who must have been horrified by what they saw on the police footage. How have we reached a stage in this country where when the police go to an incident, they arrest a dying man because they're afraid of being accused of racism by his murderer? And this is something which is affecting police right across the United Kingdom. Only this week in my constituency, in a park on the edge of my constituency, the police were called where a gather of Muslims, men, were seen to be carrying weapons. No arrests were made, excuses were made for the carrying of the weapons, and the anger of the community is palpable. Would the Secretary of State make it clear to the police that policing should be based not on fear of racism or direction by chief constables, but and it shouldn't be based on the colour of people's skin. The police should carry out their duty impartially, and two-tier policing only diminishes the police, undermines their credibility and undermines their standing in the community, which is bad for everybody.
Well, look, let me say to the honourable gentleman, there can of course be no suggestion of two-tier policing, and we would never, and no one would ever stand for that. I hope he would acknowledge that the police respond to danger every single day and have to make quick decisions in usually very difficult circumstances, and in the vast majority of cases they do get things right. And I do think it's important that we acknowledge the broader picture in relation to policing. Of course, when things go wrong or if the balance is not struck correctly, that should be investigated, scrutinised, and lessons must always be learned. But I wouldn't want us to be in a position where we just accept that somehow there are, big problems here in relation to how our police, generally speaking, approach their job. I do agree that any instances where it looks like something has gone wrong do cost public confidence within policing, but that is why we have the independent arrangements that we do with the IOPC to investigate fully, to make findings of fact that then the government and others can take action on.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Henry Novak's murder was a senseless, evil act, a criminal act that Vikram Digba bears responsibility for. That he provided false claims to evade responsibility is horrific. The actions of the perpetrator do not represent a whole community, and I know the Sikh community in the UK wholly condemn it. Many of us are deeply distressed about the circumstances of Henry's death and his treatment in the final moments. So how will the Secretary of State ensure that those lessons are learned and that Henry's family are put first and fully considered? And on knife crime, how will we ensure that the root causes are dealt with and that resources are provided to agencies but also communities?
Home Secretary.
Well, let me assure her that the Knife Crime Action Plan is funded, and we have put significant money behind violence reduction units and other measures that we know are absolutely imperative in dealing with knife crime in our country. And let me assure her again, as soon as the IOPC investigation is concluded, I will make sure the House is updated.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Is it normal police practice to handcuff a person lying helpless on the ground and clearly offering no resistance? And given her admirable and utter rejection of differential treatment of people according to their race, will she undertake to examine and withdraw the policing policy document identified by the Shadow Home Secretary as embodying precisely such differential treatment?
Secretary.
Well, let me say to him on policing practice and the specifics of this case, that is precisely what the IOPC is looking at, because they take into account context and what the expectations of police officers are, given the specific contexts of danger that they face. And the IOPC will look into that. Once they've made their findings of fact, I will, of course, return to the House. And let me say again, look, on the issue of differential treatment, he will know. He is a member of long-standing in this House. We've had many debates where, from the opposite end of the race spectrum, if I might put it like that, today we are talking primarily about the white community in this instance, but there have been many debates in this House about differential treatment for minority communities as well. It's why I say I don't think it's helpful for us to look at this through a community-specific lens. It is much broader than that. I will, of course, make sure that I always engage with the police on the specifics of their policies, but it is not my view that the police are institutionally or systemically operating a system of differential treatment, and we will always make sure that we guard against that, and I will work with the police to make sure that never happens.
Toby Perkins.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Home Secretary's...
OK, well, you have been watching and listening to the Home Secretary there, Shabana Mahmood, addressing the House of Commons. The Shadow Home Secretary also gave a response, and we've been hearing from a number of MPs who've all turned out to put their own questions to the Home Secretary on the Henry Novak murder.
And we were hearing from Shabana Mahmood how they hope that that independent Office for Police Conduct investigation into the behaviour of those police officers on the evening that they responded to the stabbing of Henry Novak, that they expect the IOPC to conclude that investigation and publish their findings within 3 to 4 months.
OK, well, this, of course, all relates to the murder of Henry Novak. Now, last night, police released distressing body cam footage showing the 18-year-old. And we are about to show some on the screen, but we do so with the consent of Henry's family, who want people to see for themselves how their son was treated in the moments leading up to his death.
Now, here is Henry being handcuffed in his final moments after he was fatally stabbed in Southampton in December. The footage was shown in court as part of the trial. This is being shared as part of the media protocol. And of course, as we've said, after engaging with Henry's family throughout the trial. One of the most shocking parts is when Henry cries out for help. Take a listen.
Been stabbed. You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? Don't think you have, mate.
Well, yes, as you can see, as Henry lies, he lays dying on the floor. He's handcuffed by the police. Now, Vikram Digwar, who murdered Henry, has now been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 21 years. And in the last few moments, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has addressed the House of Commons, saying the murder was an evil act, and she says justice will run its full course.
Yesterday, the Novak family ended their statement with a powerful call to us all. I quote, "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension." They quoted the words of the prosecuting lawyer. And I quote again, Mr. Speaker, "This is not a case about Sikhism. This is not a case about racism. This is a case about murder."
OK. She did push back on the idea that there is any kind of institutional bias or that people are treated differently under the law depending on their race or whatever else.
Yeah, she certainly said that the police should police without fear or favour. Did they in this instance? Well, the IOPC will have to try to conclude that.
Well, let's turn to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's outside Downing Street. Christopher, many MPs there present to put their questions to the Home Secretary. What do you make of her response?
I think her response is understandable if you're the Home Secretary. She's got to appeal for division, for communities to come together. I noted a rather testy exchange with Robert Jenrick, of course, who is Reform UK's finance spokesman. She said that this isn't a moment to pit white Britons against non-white Britons. So that is where she's coming from. She's trying to appeal across the board, trying to say a young man died at the hand of a Sikh man. That is true. A murder case is concluded. They're looking at the length of the sentencing into prison for 21 years. Should it be 25 years, as Kevin Badenoch says, or longer, as others might say? Let's try and bring the communities together. Of course, others on the Tory side are saying, well, this is a moment here in politics. Kevin Badenoch told me that this morning. This is as significant as the Stephen Lawrence murders, a moment for the police forces to wake up and understand who are they favouring here. Are they more worried about racism and being seen to be racist than dealing with a dying boy on the ground, handcuffing him and saying words to the effect of, I don't believe you when you say you've been stabbed once in the face and in the back as well. It's unbelievable, I think, for many to hear that. And you heard that, I think, in the House of Commons. So this Sir Sadiq Khan, who's the Mayor of London, he has criticised what he calls knockout politics after Reform UK leader Nigel Farage demanded pure cold rage over the treatment of the murder victim Henry Novak. He said this, "I think today is about remembering Henry Novak and thinking about his family rather than being involved in knockout politics. I can't imagine what Henry Novak's family is going through. It's just tragic. I am heartbroken for them." Now, the Prime Minister understands the scale of all this. He gave a message last night on Twitter. We're expecting to hear from him later today on camera when he'll talk to broadcasters. He told his team earlier how upset he was about this. He watched the video, as many of us tried to watch last night, although I personally couldn't get through the video. It was too upsetting. He saw the body cam footage. He was appalled by it. He told this to his team today, that Henry Novak was a kind, thoughtful and much-loved young man who had his life ripped away by an attacker who shamelessly lied about what had happened. That's what Number 10 says he said. And also the thoughts of the whole cabinet, he says, were with Henry today. He had lain handcuffed and dying on the floor. As I say, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, has received multiple requests to review the 21-year minimum life tariff for the attacker. He's got 28 days to review that. We'll bring you that news as soon as we get it. In terms of ceremonial knives, the government is not looking at banning Sikhs from carrying ceremonial knives. Number 10 say that that knife was ceremonial until it was produced and attacked Henry Novak. At that point, it became a murder weapon, and that's why it's important to balance the issue of ceremonial knives with when it became an attacking item. So, yes, a moment there. We had been expecting Sarah Jones, who's the Crime Minister, to be speaking to MPs today about that. At some point today, Number 10 or the Home Office or both upgraded that statement to one by the Home Secretary. And as I say, we'll be hearing from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, shortly, and we'll bring those words to you as soon as we get them. I think the government is slowly, addressing and getting more on the front foot to addressing the real concern we're seeing in our inbox at GB News and from our viewers and listeners about why this has happened, why were the police's priorities wrong, why were they more worried about being seen to be racist and believing that the attacker who was Sikh, rather than dealing with a white person, a white man on the floor who was bleeding away into the ground.
You said there that the hope was that this could be a seminal moment, something akin to the murder of Stephen Lawrence. I hope you're right. I'd like to believe you're right, but all I've heard today are people pushing back, commentators and politicians pushing back hard on the likes of, Nigel Farage and others in his party. As you've just read out there, that statement from Sadiq Khan talking about knockdown politics, it doesn't seem like they're listening if this is that seminal moment.
No, I think when we're old enough, aren't we, Mark, to remember the murder of Stephen Lawrence. That was deeply upsetting, and that led to the Macpherson report, which concluded that the Met police force was institutionally racist, and that set the tone. And of course, no one disputes that was the right thing to do. And the attempt of bringing his attackers to justice carried on for many, many years after that, the murderers of Stephen Lawrence. And this is a moment of why the police felt they should believe the Sikh man who claimed his turban had been knocked off by Henry Novak. That wasn't the case. And why believe him when his, I think it was his brother, called the police when it should have been calling an ambulance to deal with the attack on Henry Novak? I think this hasn't gone away. People are absolutely furious about it. We're seeing that, of course, in our your say at GB News. As I say, I'll be hearing from the Prime Minister shortly on camera. We will bring you those words as soon as we get them, and that will feed into this debate.
Christopher, thank you so much. We'll speak to you again later. Let's now speak to the Reform UK Policing and Crime Advisor, Colin Sutton. Colin, just hearing from the Home Secretary there, are you reassured that she's taking this very seriously in terms of the accusations that potentially the police handled this very badly indeed?
Well, there are two issues. One is the individual officer's action, which was appalling. But the bigger issue, almost, is why was it so appalling? How did we get to the state where this is how policing is being done? And do you know, over the years, I've been thinking that maybe people like the Home Secretary and like Sir Sadiq Khan, in what he's just said, are deliberately missing the point. I'm not so sure now. I think they just don't get it. They just don't get it. The issue here is not about pitting communities against each other in terms of the attack that happened. The issue is that communities are being pitted against each other by the very principles and brainwashing that goes on to police officers to tell them, to make them use their powers in different ways, depending on what the call is, what the nature of the complaint is, what the race, religion, orientation of that caller is. And until we understand and grasp that fact, until they understand and grasp that fact, we're going to see more Valdo Calicanes. We're going to see more of the thousands of rape gangs. We're going to see more people like this, because we have not grasped the fact that policing needs to be done impartially, completely.
And in terms of your own experience as a senior police officer, Colin, you're still in touch regularly with those within the service. This whole issue of top-down, instilled in them, put race, it seems, above everything else, causing officers to second-guess their actions out on the street. Is that something you saw? Is that something that those officers you speak to now say is a concern for them?
It's an absolute concern, yeah. You've got brave young men and women who want to serve their communities. They want to do a job to help their communities and to rid them of the things that are causing problems. And that's things like burglary, it's things like assaults, it's things like phone thefts. And what they see is that they're railroaded in to dealing with things like non-crime hate incidents and social media spats and all these other things that we know are the result of a noisy minority saying, we want protection, we want you to deal with us. And that's turning them away in their droves. People are joining the police, they're thinking, this is not the job for me, this is not the job I thought it was going to be, and they're leaving. And that's a real issue, because that's a waste. It's a waste of the money that's invested in their training, but it's also a waste of the preparedness and talent of those young people who want to serve their communities in the way that those communities want to be served. And this is the most fundamental thing that is wrong with British policing at the moment.
OK, well, Colin Sutton, thank you indeed for your time. Reform UK Policing and Crime Advisor there, Colin Sutton.
Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, I mean, people just see things so vastly differently, don't they, when it comes to, this incident?
I think...
How do we...
This is...
Bridge divides.
It's been another deeply depressing day, I'm sorry, in this story.
Oh, yeah.
But absolutely, you're hearing people say they want to learn from this, they want to move on from this. But all I've heard, as I say this afternoon, are people just, using the opportunity to batter Nigel Farage, Reform members around the head, describe this.
Yeah, saying you're being divisive by asking these questions. Anyway, well, that's it. That's it. Watching Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon. Up next is Martin Daubney.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another very mixed day of weather across the United Kingdom today. Rain lingering in the far north of Scotland, heavy downpours elsewhere, mixed with hail and thunder. These are going to be lively showers rotating around an area of low pressure that is sitting across northern Scotland. And that's where this occluded weather front is going to linger through the rest of the day. So outbreaks of more persistent rain north of the central belt, although largely avoiding Shetland and Orkney where it's mostly dry. Further south, much of southern Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, it's slow-moving, heavy showers with some hail and thunder mixed in, gusty winds, but not feeling too cool, with temperatures still a degree or two above average, so in any brighter spells up to 22 Celsius. And there will be some brighter spells through the afternoon and evening, but watch out for these showers. There will be quite a few of them moving through on a stiff westerly breeze. Northern Ireland also seeing a number of showers, lots more cloud here, likewise for southern Scotland, but gaps in between the downpours. The rain across northern and western Scotland tending to ease through the evening, pushing into Orkney and Shetland by this stage, but mostly lightening and more patchy in nature before it moves away to the north. And then drier for many overnight, but still a number of showers moving in, especially across northern and western parts of the UK. And then we've got this next band of rain approaching from the Atlantic as the night progresses. A breezy night for many, so actually relatively mild, but not as stuffy as the nighttime was last week. Now, we start off Wednesday with outbreaks of persistent rain across Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Heavy